Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here with the reading of the second document that was filed by the Eastern District of New York in response to Jennifer Bonjean's request for an acquittal. And so this document is titled The Government's Memorandum of Law in opposition to the defendant's motion for a judgment of acquittal. And so I already read the first document, which was about the jury selection and ineffective counsel and how they handled the jury selection. So you guys can go and check that out. And I'll also drop the link above as always. And so this document is 109 pages. So I am probably going to break it up because the last document was like 45 pages and it took over 2 hours to read that and give my feedback on it. And so I don't want to like drag this out because I'm thinking this might be 4 or 5 hours. So I am just going to read till I get to a comfortable point, and then I'll cut it off, and then we can do another video with the remainder. And so it opens up with the table of contents, and the table of contents is basically, they're calling it factual background. They're going to talk about their so-called enterprise that they created, and then they're going to talk about the the herpes again. Then we're going to move into Angela, Aaliyah, Stephanie, Addie, Kate, Sonya, Alexis, Lewis and Alex, Jerhonda, Anna, Azriel, and Faith. Then they're going to have a discussion on legal standard 2, the racketeering conviction was sound. The government adduced sufficient evidence of an enterprise, which is a lie from the pits of hell that you did not do. Applicable law, members of the enterprise share the common purpose to engage in a course of conduct. The enterprise was distinct and from its racketeering activities. The enterprise was distinct from Kelly. The enterprise affected interstate and foreign commerce. So, child, they're going to go on and on and on and on and on because this was about 2 or 3 pages. But they're basically going to break down all the charges and explain why they feel that it was a good case and that they proved their point and all that good stuff. Then they have their table of authorities. And if you watched the last video, you know that 75% of that document was case law. You know, so it was kind of hard to break away what was their thoughts basis what was in other cases. And so a paragraph might have been 20 lines long, but only the last 2 lines was actually related to Kelly's case, was their opinion on Kelly's case. The rest was supporting document from other cases. And so they have about 3 pages of cases that they are going to cite in this document. So let's go ahead and start with the introduction. It says the government respectfully submits this memorandum of law in opposition to the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly's motion for a judgment of acquittal pursuant to Rule 29 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. And then they tell you to look at the memorandum that was sent for a judgment of acquittal, which was the document that Jennifer Bonjean submitted. So it says on September 27, 2021, Kelly was convicted following a 6-week jury trial of racketeering in violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 1962C, Count 1, transportation of Azriel for purposes of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code 2421A, Count 2, coercion of Jane for the purpose of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2422A. Count 3, coercion of Azriel as a minor for the purpose of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2422B. Count 4, transportation of Jane as a minor for the purpose of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2423A. Count 5, transportation of Faith for the purpose of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2421A. Count 6, coercion of Faith for the purpose of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2422A. Count 7, transportation of Faith for the purpose of illegal activity in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2421A. Count 8, and coercion of Faith for the purpose of illegal sexual activity in violation of Title 18. Now, I'm not sure how they're calling this coercion when Faith herself admits that she willingly went with this man. Her only issue was the fact that she claims he gave her herpes without her knowledge that he had the disease. She says she's not a victim. And she's not a survivor, that she was just somebody chasing dollars and got caught up. Okay. So Kelly now moves to set aside his convictions. He argues that the court should reverse his conviction because he asserts no rational jury could have found the evidence sufficient to support his convictions. For the reasons set forth below, his motion is without merit and should be denied. So factual background. The evidence adduced at trial consisted of testimony from 50 witnesses, including 45 witnesses called by the government and 5 called by the defendant, and hundreds of exhibits admitted at trial. A summary of the evidence supporting each of the counts of which the defendant was convicted is set forth below. Kelly and the Enterprise. Since the 1990s, Robert Kelly has recorded and performed as a professional museum touring across the United States and beyond. Kelly primarily resided and recorded his music in Chicago. In the 1990s, he resided at an apartment in downtown Chicago and later at 1010 George Street in Chicago, Illinois. 1336, and recorded music at CRC Recording Company, a recording studio in Chicago. In approximately 2003, Kelly used a recording studio located at 865 North Larrabee Street in Chicago, which was formerly named Chicago Tracks. In or about 2004, Kelly stopped using that studio and began to use one in the basement of his residence in Olympia Fields, Illinois. Kelly eventually moved out of Olympia Fields and resided in an apartment at the Trump Towers in Chicago, and for a period of time, and maintained multiple houses in Johns Creek, a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. Kelly also used recording studios across the country, including New York, Florida, Georgia, and California. Then there's a note at the bottom that says both the studios on North Larrabee and in Olympia Fields were called the Chocolate Factory. Kelly surrounded himself with an inner circle, which included a business manager, an accountant, recording engineers, personal assistants, runners, drivers, security personnel, and members of his entourage. For example, Demetrius Smith worked for Kelly, including as a personal assistant and tour manager between 1984 and 1994, and then for a second stint until 1996. Kelly's inner circle in those early years also included his manager, Barry Hankerson, as well as Larry Hood, Bruce Kelly, and Tyree Jameson. After Hankerson, Daryl McDavid served as Kelly's manager and as his accountant. Donnie Lyle served as Kelly's musical director at various times between 2003 and 2011. Tom Arnold served as Kelly's studio manager, road manager, and as a personal assistant. And let me stop here. So as I'm reading this, they have these notations at the end of each sentence, and basically they are getting these facts, as they call them, that they have listed here from the actual testimony. So they're basically like, it'll say that Smith 667, 668, 674. So those were times during Demetrius Smith's testimony where he stated that he was the manager during this period of time. They have the Copeland lady, where she made these statements about these different people. So these notations are throughout the document, and they're basically pulling this information from the actual testimony at trial. So then it goes on and says, Donnie Lyle served as Kelly's musical director at various times between 2003 and 2011. Tom Arnold served as Kelly's studio manager, road manager, and as a personal assistant. Diana Copeland served as Kelly's personal assistant and later executive assistant, beginning in approximately 2004 and staying for approximately 15 years. Kelly also employed many runners, including Nicholas Williams and later Anthony Navarro. Another close associate was Jermaine Maxey, also known as Bubba. During the later years, his personal assistants included Milton June Brown, George Junebug Kelly, Van Pullen, Cheryl Mack, Suzette Mayweather, Alizette Mayweather, Lily, and Cassandra. Now, child, who is Cassandra? I hope they ain't talking about that fake sister. Okay, Kelly and his inner circle worked to promote Kelly's music and brand, as well as to meet Kelly's demands in his personal life. And you guys notice that they keep referring to them as the inner circle. Though these were his hired employees, these people were on payroll. His inner circle managed the studio and tour buses, ensuring that they were clean and stocked with food and other supplies. His assistants arranged for nightly basketball games, both in Chicago and while Kelly was on tour. His runners served as receptionists, answering phones and recording messages. At times, his runners required visitors to sign non-disclosure agreements and make copies of their identification documents. His runners escorted visitors, including his female guests, to rooms within his residence or his studio. His inner circle ensured that Kelly attended business meetings. His inner circle carried Kelly's backpack, which contained, among other things, iPads that he used to record sexual activity. And then I guess, who are they saying? So they're claiming that Azrael said that somebody named Shabbat, Azrael again, Azrael again, Azrael again, Faith, Anna. So basically, Azrael put this story out there that he was using these iPads and carrying them around because she kept talking about it multiple times during her testimony. And then it has in parentheses depicting Kelly removing an iPad from his backpack. So I guess that was maybe a video evidence showing him removing the iPad. I'm not sure. Yeah, Government Exhibit 328A was a video showing him removing the iPad. So I guess that's a crime, y'all, to be reaching in y'all backpacks, pulling that iPad. So y'all better be looking around, when you get ready to pull out your tablets to record something, make sure ain't no cameras watching you, because that could be used against you in a court of law. So Kelly's inner circle also assisted Kelly in his personal life. For example, Kelly's inner circle distributed slips of paper with Kelly's telephone number to women and girls. And that is something I really just have not gotten over. And every time I read about these slips of paper, all I can think about is when you go to the laundromat or like to a common area real popular like on college campuses where somebody will have a need for something, or they're, offering like babysitting service, or they're having a yard sale or something, and they will put it on a piece of paper, and then they'll have their phone number written like across the bottom of the paper, and then they cut it into slits. So the number will be written vertically, and then it's cut into slits, and then people that are interested in whatever it is that they're doing, they'll tear off the phone number to call you about it. Every time I hear about this passing out these slips of paper, that's what I think about. So it says, Kelly's Inner Circle selected women and girls to join him backstage and at after parties. When Kelly used the Chicago track studio, and when his studio was housed in the basement of his residence in Olympia Fields, his runners regularly picked up his female guests from their homes, nearby train stations, and airports. So listen, if you got somebody coming into town, or if you got somebody coming to the house, don't be sending your friends to go and pick them up, okay, to bring them to your house, because that could be seen as part of a RICO, okay? That's a violation of the RICO Act according to the Eastern District of New York. Okay, so it says, one of Kelly's drivers drove one of Kelly's female guests, a 16-year-old girl, from a mall in Jacksonville to meet Kelly in Miami, a 5.5-hour trip. Child, where was that girl's mama at? Alexis, where was your mama when you was driving from Jacksonville to Miami? So Kelly's Inner Circle ordered food for Kelly's female guests. Kelly's Inner Circle also assisted Kelly's female guests in arranging air travel and hotel rooms for Kelly's female guests, allowing his guests to visit Kelly in Chicago and across the United States. So don't be having other people make travel arrangements for your guests to come and visit you. I guess you need to make them arrangements. Better yet, make them make those arrangements, and then you reimburse them when they get back, when they get to you. That way there's no trace, and pay them in cash. Don't be using no bank transactions where it can be tracked, okay? So Kelly's Inner Circle accompanied his female guests to Kelly's basketball games, the mall, and the salon. Kelly's Inner Circle picked up medication to treat Kelly's genital herpes. Kelly's Inner Circle stood guard when Kelly required them to stay on a bus as punishment. Run your own errands, okay? Don't be hiring people to be doing this stuff for you, because that could be part of a RICO. So Kelly's Inner Circle was required to abide by several rules. For example, they were required to sign non-disclosure agreements and not permitted to take photographs. They were required to knock before entering any rooms. They were required to obtain approval before carrying out even the most mundane of tasks, such as allowing a guest to go to the bathroom. And then they quote Tom Arnold as saying, "We would try to call Rob to get permission." They were prohibited, I think that's supposed to be they were prohibited from looking at or speaking with any of Kelly's female guests. His female assistants were not permitted to speak with his male assistants in front of Kelly's female guests and girlfriends. So if you run a business that requires privacy, okay, like you don't want people out there telling all your business because you're a celebrity and all of that good stuff, don't hire staff to maintain control, okay, within your business. Okay? And actually, when you go to work today, I want you to see if your company that you work for, like, is there spaces within the company that you're not allowed to go into? You know how some companies have elevators, and the elevator, based on your security level, you cannot access certain floors within the company. Like when you need to go to personnel, do you have to call before you can go to personnel, or can you just walk into personnel and tell them about your paycheck was short 50 cents? Throughout your day at work today, find out if your company is running a RICO, okay? A RICO organization. Are they a part of an enterprise? Because you can't go into certain places. Like you can't go to the storeroom and just take ink pens and paper for your kids' project at school. See if those are the type of things that happen. And do you have to use a security badge to get into the building where you work at? Do you have designated parking spaces? Do you have to go through security to get into the parking lot? All of those could be signs that your company is running an illegal organization. So let's carry on. So Kelly required his inner circle to carry out his demands and to be fiercely loyal. For example, in the middle of one night, Kelly told Suzette Mayweather that she needed to bring him a sweet potato pie. What? Causing her to travel to a Walmart store open 24 hours a day to purchase him a Patti LaBelle sweet potato pie. On another occasion, Kelly told Cheryl Mike that Precious, an aspiring singer whom Mike had introduced to Kelly when Precious was just 17 years old, had filed a lawsuit against Kelly, and that Mike needed to travel from Atlanta to Chicago and pick a team before she made her decision. Kelly threatened Mike that in these types of situations, people come up missing. Many members of his inner circle were paid a weekly salary for their efforts. Although when members did not meet Kelly's expectations, Kelly fined members of his inner circle by withholding funds owed to them. In addition, Kelly required several members of his inner circle to write letters, falsely confessing to bad conduct, and provide those letters to Kelly so that Kelly could use it for his protection. So, guys, listen carefully to me because I'm trying to keep y'all out of trouble. When your boyfriend or your girlfriend call and say she coming over and you got a taste for some Patti LaBelle sweet potato pie, do not ask them to stop at the 24-hour Walmart to pick you up a sweet potato pie. Especially if you guys had an argument before agreeing to let that person come over and they want to get you a gift to show you how sorry they were. Do not have them go to the 24-hour Walmart and pick up no Patti LaBelle sweet potato pie. Okay? And then, I don't know about y'all. Okay? But when y'all are in high school and college and you were on like a team and they had rules like you couldn't be late or your uniform had to be washed so many days. I think they used to call them demerits. Like you would get demerits if you broke the rules and didn't do what you were supposed to do or weren't in place or where you were supposed to be. And sometimes they had like a financial fine where you had to pay like $5. Or have you ever had that curse jar on the job where if you curse, you had to put like $1 in the jar. Then at the end of the week, the person with the less amount of curses got the money or the company donated the money to a charity or something. Y'all better stop participating in stuff like that and stop telling y'all boyfriends and girlfriends bring y'all sweet potato pie as a sign of apology for what they did. Okay? And then what else they were talking about in this thing? And actually, if you go to work late, like I had a job one time where the hours were clocked in 15-minute increments and you could have been 5 minutes late to work, but they sure enough docked you 15 minutes. Okay? I think them people was running a RICO, okay? And I need to get the government on this because they owe me for my extra 10 minutes, okay, that they didn't pay me when I was late. So anyway, and what about them jobs like when you are repeatedly breaking the rules, like repeatedly late, and you get suspended for a day or 2 days, 3 days, and then they eventually fire you? Like, could that be considered a RICO because you're being punished for not doing what you agreed to do when you accepted the job? Like you're not, abiding by the rules. And what about when you get demoted? Like you ever got a promotion and you were not performing up to par, and rather than fire your butt, they send you back to your other job down in the mail room, so now you can't be a customer service rep no more? Has that ever happened to y'all? Okay, so y'all better watch this kind of stuff. Y'all paying attention? Let's move on. Okay, so finally, Kelly expected his inner circle to make sure that his female guests and girlfriends abided by Kelly's rules. For example, when one of Kelly's girlfriends, Anna, left Kelly on one occasion, Kelly confronted Diana Copeland about how she had, quote unquote, let Anna escape. Another time, Kelly directed Copeland to, quote unquote, pay close attention to his female guests' use of their cellular telephones. And then they have text message forwarded by Kelly to Copeland that said, "You should pay close attention to the girls' phones. I would say especially Azriel, who always sorry about that. And what exactly they do on them." On another occasion, Kelly confronted Suzette Mayweather after he learned that several months earlier she had let a girlfriend, Dominique, off the tour bus when they were in New Orleans without first obtaining Kelly's permission. When Kelly learned that, on another occasion, Dominique had shared personal information from his assistant, Suzette Mayweather, Kelly confronted Suzette Mayweather, leading Suzette Mayweather to falsely tell Kelly that she, Suzette Mayweather, had brought up the conversation that led to Dominique sharing those details because Suzette Mayweather feared that what Kelly might do to Dominique. Well, girl, what did you fear? It just seems to me like y'all was doing a whole bunch of gossiping and keeping stuff stirred up, and that man needed y'all to shut the hell up, okay? And just stop, because when people be having multiple boyfriends and girlfriends, they have to be trying to keep that stuff, separate from one another. Like they can't be having them people having conversations and find out. I will tell y'all that story, because I got to keep this entertaining because this is boring. But I remember one time my kid's dad, he was a hoe. Okay. And I had went through his drawers at Christmas time, like looking for my Christmas present. And so I had found like 3 different things in the drawer. And so when Christmas came, I didn't get either one of those 3 things. So I had an issue, but I couldn't confront him about the fact that I had been through his drawers, right? Well, let me tell y'all, I had to stress myself out because now I'm looking around trying to see who had what, who had the ring on, who had the earrings on, who had the necklace on, But see, he knew I had been through his stuff because he had a camera in the room and he was hiding them gifts from me. And I did find one of them, y'all. His mother had the earrings on, but I never found out who got the ring and who got the necklace, I think it was. But anyway, this is all this man was trying to do. He was trying to, even though he had all these women in the same house together and they were commingling with each other, he probably was telling each one of them different things when he was whispering them sweet nothings in their ear. And so he needed his inner circle staff members that were on payroll to do their job and not be having conversations trying to find out, well, girl, he gave Dominique keys to the car, to the Mercedes. Like, you got your driver's license, girl, because you need to get keys to the Lexus. That kind of stuff. Trying to keep friction and confusion down and not having all this jibber jabber. And these were employees, so they shouldn't have been having personal conversations with his girlfriends if that was not a part of their job function. And Suzette was basically just trying to get information because wasn't she the one that helped produce Surviving R. Kelly, who was giving them information for the show? That's why he, was tripping on her, because he knew something was up and she was going behind his back doing stuff. Okay? All right. So let's move on. So part 2, Kelly's genital herpes diagnosis. They love talking about these damn herpes, don't they? I think 1 or 2 or 3 of them prosecutors got herpes, and that's why they keep on talk about it, because they mad at the boyfriend who gave it to them. So it says, Dr. Chris McGrath was Kelly's primary care physician for over 25 years, beginning in September 1994 until September in 2019. And Dr. McGrath wasn't fired as the doctor. He stated in his testimony that they just kind of fell off because Kelly had been arrested. And then in Chicago, he could only have 2 visitors that were not relatives. And those 2 visitors we know were Azriel and Jocelyn, who were supposed to rotate every 90 days. But then when it was Jocelyn's turn to come, Azriel got in her feelings, and then that's when everything went to hell, because hell has no fury like a woman scorned. And Azriel was pissed that he would not get rid of Jocelyn and let her be the main bitch. Okay. So at some point after June 2000 and before March 19th, 2007, That's 7 whole years, y'all. 2 months shy of 7 whole years. Dr. McGrath concluded that Kelly had contracted genital herpes. How do you have a whole 6 years and 10 months to determine that somebody got herpes? That don't even make no sense. Anyway, it says, as was his regular practice following his diagnosis, Dr. McGrath told Kelly that he had genital herpes and advised Kelly to inform his sexual partners of this fact, so they could make a decision whether or not to have sex with you or not. Dr. McGrath further advised Kelly to use a condom during sex, and specifically recalled Kelly indicating he understood the doctor's advice when Kelly stated, "Then I should not put it in raw. I should put a hood on it." And Dr. McGrath confirmed to Kelly that he should use a condom during sex. He should have been doing that whether he had a STD or not, especially if you out here just screwing all these random heifers that you meeting in backstage after the concert and having sex with them in the closet. Okay, like, why are you sticking your wee-wee into people that you don't know, that you've known for only 5 minutes and don't really know them? So that's just nasty. I'm sorry, but that's just nasty. I would say that to any man. Like, don't be meeting random people and putting your thing in there unprotected, like AIDS and all that going around. No. So number 3, Angela. So Angela first met Kelly in 1991 through her friend Tiffany during the break between her freshman and sophomore year in high school. Angela was 14 or 15. That is that heifer, Javante Cunningham, right? At the time, aspired to be an entertainer. She wanted to sing and dance. Didn't they all? Tiffany was also in high school, attending Kenwood Academy in Chicago, and an aspiring singer. Tiffany invited Angela to go to Kelly's apartment in the South Loop of Chicago, telling Angela that Kelly was a singer who had recently released a single. And you guys know Tiffany is Tiffany Hawkins, who is in the Chicago case. So Tiffany and Angela went to Kelly's apartment with 2 other girls who were also in high school. Why they wasn't in school? Ugh. When they arrived at the apartment, Bruce Kelly, Demetrius Smith, and Larry Hood were at the apartment with the defendant. Everyone in the apartment joked for about an hour in the communal space across from the kitchen, after which Kelly went into another room and each of the high school girls, including Angela, followed him into the same room, one by one at different intervals. Either Tiffany or the Kelly invited Angela into the room. I don't know why they got the Kelly. But anyway, when she entered, Angela observed the 3 other high school girls in different areas of the room. One was taking off her clothes, another was standing there, and the third was taking off her shirt. Kelly asked Angela to climb on top of him. Startled, Angela paused for a moment, but then did exactly what Kelly asked her to do. Kelly then asked Angela to straddle him and to ride him, and she asked Kelly if she could grab a condom. Kelly said he did not have any, and Angela told him she did and obtained it. So, child, these high school girls was already hunching. Okay, they walking around with condoms. They know how to straddle a grown man. They taking off their clothes because they want to get down with our Kelly. And this, people love to act like all of this was happening while Kelly was in his 50s. So let's be clear. During this time, he would have been... When did we say this happened? This wasn't this like in 91 or something like that, in the early 90s? Do they have the date in here? 91. So he was born in 67, 87. Wait a minute, these dates can't. 77, 87. So he was 24, around 24 at the time this was going down. And they were, what, teenagers? Did they ever say how old they were? It seemed like I read at some point they claimed they was 14 and 15. So if y'all were 14 and 15 and already know how to jump on a grown man's unit, y'all was some hoes from a long time ago. Y'all was running around sucking and clucking a long time. If y'all were up in a grown man's apartment when y'all was in high school in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, willingly, without hesitation, having sex, walking around with condoms already in y'all pocketbook. It was a whole lot already going on. Not to say that he was right to be having sex with, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, but I'm just saying these were some grown acting young women that was ready to throw down at any moment, okay? So anyway, Angela then put the condom on Kelly, child. Now, she was one of them experienced girls that knew how to slide it down, y'all, on Kelly, and the two had sexual intercourse in the presence of the 3 other high school girls. In the room, Kelly also had sexual intercourse with at least one other person and sexual contact with all of them, including by caressing and suckling their breasts and fingering and all kind of manners of devilment going on in that room. When Angela and the others left the room, Angela observed that Demetrius Smith, Bruce Kelly, and Larry Hood were still in the apartment. Before Angela and the 3 other girls left the apartment, Kelly invited them to return the following day, child, which they did. Why weren't y'all in school? Where were your parents? Who taught y'all how to be pleasing a grown man? It was just a whole lot going on that should not have been going on. And do we even know if any of this is truth? Like, was there any proof given that this was a true story, y'all? Like, come on. Anyway, child. And I actually think that they allowed Javante to get up there and tell this lie, and then they're going to turn around and use it as evidence, because Tiffany, we know, is a part of the other case in Chicago, and I guarantee you that they're going to enter this information into that Chicago case and then try to make it seem as it is factual information that has been proven, because this jury, that these paid actors that they had on this jury found him guilty. Therefore, this must have been the truth. And then they're going to try and use this against him in the Chicago trial. Watch and see. So for the next few days, Angela saw Kelly almost every day, either at his apartment or at CRC Recording Company, a recording studio in Chicago. Angela saw Kelly along with Tiffany and a different assortment of young ladies on a regular basis. At some point in 1991, Angela stopped attending high school after Kelly gave her the option to either go to school or sing. At the time, Angela, Tiffany, and another girl were singing together as a group, which Kelly later named Second Chapter. Y'all ever heard of Second Chapter? I'm going to have to Google this and see if I can find some of their music and see if these girls could really, really sing. And where were their parents when Kelly said go to school or sing? Did the parents not have any say-so in whether or not their children dropped out of school? Where are the parents? Like, was Javante's mother in court with her when she was there testifying, telling this story? What is her thoughts and feelings upon learning that her child was out there doing all this with this grown man? Did she not care? Why did her mother file charges against R. Kelly for what he did to her daughter when she was underage? Can somebody help me understand, like, what was going on? And please let me know some songs that Second Chapter put out, and so I can go and listen to it and see if they really could sing. And what happened to these singing careers? Like, did they not go anywhere? Did they give up on their dreams? Like, what really happened? So anyway, Kelly continued to have relationships with Angela while she was between the ages. Okay, so she was 15 and he was 24. Okay. Approximately 15 through 17 on multiple occasions at his apartment, the recording studio, and while they were on the road. Angela did not want to have intercourse with Kelly, but did so because he told her and other girls they had to pay their dues. So why weren't they part of this indictment? Why they didn't have Javante and these other girls? Why weren't they charged? Acts. You have to ask yourself that question. Why didn't y'all file charges and make them victims in this indictment? So Kelly also asked Angela to bring other girls around, telling her to get some girls or bring him some new talent. Towards the end of 1992 and into early 1993, Kelly's interactions with Angela became less frequent, though they still occurred. And I also want to state, and I think I've stated this before, that, this was around the crack cocaine era, and then when rap music had really taken a chokehold. And these young girls were running after these dudes because they wanted that money. They wanted to be in those inner circles. And so they were dropping it like it was hot. And I point out the age difference because it was very, very common. See, a lot of people that are commenting on this story and what was going on are trying to pretend like they were not teenagers at some point, chasing after older guys. But see, I remember being a teenager. And I remember, like not these type of teenagers. Don't get me wrong here. I was not these type of teenagers, because at 15 and 16, I wasn't doing this nasty stuff that they was doing. But I can recall being 17 and 18 years old, and we had Major League Baseball used to have spring training in our area. You guys know Darryl Strawberry. I used to have the biggest crush on Darryl Strawberry, and I may have told you guys this in another video, how me and my friend found out he was staying at the Hilton, so we staking out the lobby. And this was when I was like 17 years old, staking out the lobby for Darryl Strawberry to come down. And we have this place called the Pier. And somehow we found out, I think he came down and we followed him. And so we ended up meeting up at the pier. And he had asked, I think he finally turned around and spoke or something. But anyway, we ended up having this conversation. And Darryl Strawberry said, "Oh, will you come back to my room and everything?" And so he gave me the room number and everything. But now when it came time to show and prove, your girl chickened out. I was like, child, I'm going to go up there to that band room. And I think Darryl Strawberry is just a few years older than me. But I just can recall that there being high school girls that I went to school with who were dating older guys, because those older guys had money. Those older guys had cars. And so if you 16, 17, and that's the kind of stuff that you're attracted to. And the high school boys, they worried about sports. They tried to get into college on sports scholarships, the most popular guys. And then the not so popular guys, they were working after school jobs and stuff. So they didn't really have time to be fooling with girls, and they had nothing to offer the girls. So the girls would go for the older guys that were in their early 20s, who had cars, who had jobs, or either were out there slinging dope on the street and could buy them the things that they wanted, help them get their hair did, get their nails done, and all that stuff. And so when I talk about the age difference of them being like 15, 16, 17 and him being in his early 20s, that was very, very common during the 80s and the 90s. So why people are acting all in shock, acting like this is some, big dirty secret, and how dare he, when they know good and damn well that in the 80s and 90s that this was going on and this was very common. So now we're moving into Aaliyah. So in approximately 1992 in Detroit, Michigan, Kelly and his tour manager, Demetrius Smith, met Aaliyah Holton and her family. Aaliyah was the niece of Kelly's manager at the time, Barry Hankerson. In approximately January 1992, Kelly introduced Angela, Tiffany, and the third girl in their singing group to Aaliyah. Who is the third girl? How come we can't get a name for the third girl? Prior to meeting Aaliyah, Kelly told Angela that Aaliyah was the next up-and-coming artist and the next hardest wave coming out of Detroit. At the meeting, which took place on Aaliyah's birthday, Kelly told Aaliyah that Angela, Tiffany, and the third girl were going to be her background, like the singing group public announcement was for him, and would give Aaliyah her street vibe, and that they would also be there to be her friends. Aaliyah was 12 years old at the time. Thereafter, Angela saw Aaliyah regularly while Aaliyah was in Chicago working on her first album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, which was written and produced by Kelly. Kelly, fully aware of Aaliyah's age, engaged in inappropriate behavior with Aaliyah, seducing her and sometimes spending hours alone with Aaliyah in his apartment. Kelly began abusing Aaliyah beginning from at least 1992 or 1993 when she was 13 or 14. And all of this is according to Angela, also known as Javante. In 1992 or 93, Aaliyah accompanied Kelly on tour, including in Washington, D.C. On at least one occasion during the tour, Kelly performed oral on Aaliyah inside of the tour bus, which was witnessed by Javante, allegedly. Also, during this tour, as punishment for Javante, Aaliyah, and the other girls disobeying his orders to stay in the hotel, Kelly told the girls that it was dues time and they would have to put out that night, a reference to sexual conduct or contact as punishment. In August 1994, okay, let me stop here. Then Aaliyah mama put out a statement saying that she was always with Aaliyah, that she toured with Aaliyah. And then once again, what parent in their right freaking mind is letting their teenage daughters go on tour with a grown men and women, and not chaperone their children? How do you just send your children out into the world with no care and no concern? I'm just so confused by the behavior that allegedly took place with these parents who need to be facing some charges for child neglect. Like, I am trying to... Now, let me stop. Because my youngest daughter played tennis growing up. But I knew the parents, okay, of the other kids. And my daughter would go to tennis camps without me. But these were supervised tennis camps with adults that were part of the United States Tennis Association. There were other kids that we knew who were going to these tennis camps. I talked to my daughter on the telephone every day that she was gone to camp. And listen, I am that 21 questions parent. Like, my kids hated for me to pick them up from school because I was asking questions. How was your day? What happened? What happened in first period, second period, third period, fourth period? What did you do for PE? What did you eat for lunch? Like, I used to drill my kids just because I was nosy, okay? Not that I thought anything was going on, but I just always wanted them to know that they could talk to me about anything. And so I would ask these questions, and I would call my daughter on the phone every day. And I remember one time she was at this college, and she was doing like a week camp, and she sounded really sad when I called her, and I was asking her, like, what's going on, what's wrong? And she was like, well, somebody was bothering me, but they changed our rooms. And so I was like, okay. But as soon as I hung up that telephone, I called the person that was over the camp and got the details of what happened and was like, do I need to come and get my child? It doesn't seem that any of these parents was like that. And then are they saying that Aaliyah's mother was lying when she said she toured with Aaliyah? She went everywhere that Aaliyah went? Because I just can't picture, like a tennis camp is very different than the music industry and going on tour to concerts and venues where adults, like these were adult concerts. These weren't children concerts. You see what I'm saying? So either they're saying that Aaliyah's mother is lying, that she was not there, or Aaliyah's mother was complacent. And what was Aaliyah's mother thinking through this whole trial when all this stuff is being said about her daughter? Like, why didn't she come forward and speak out and say that these people are lying, that this stuff did not happen like she did during this Surviving R. Kelly? Or is she just so detached from this whole thing that she just want to live out her final days in peace? This is crazy. Anyway, in August 1994, while on tour in or around Macon, Georgia, just before taking the stage, Kelly approached Smith and told him that Aaliyah was in trouble. Despite having additional performances on the tour, Kelly instructed Smith to get or make flight reservations for him because they needed to get home immediately after the show to Chicago. Smith advised Kelly to call Hankerson, Aaliyah's uncle and Kelly's business manager, but Kelly refused, saying, "Don't call Barry. It's deeper than you think." Based on Kelly's instructions, Smith arranged round-trip airline tickets for Kelly, Smith, and his security guard, Tyree Jameson. On the plane ride back to Chicago, Kelly, who was concerned and crying a lot, explained to Smith that Aaliyah believed she was pregnant. Kelly also told Smith that after speaking with his accountant and manager, Darren McDavid, he had devised a plan to marry Aaliyah so that he could avoid jail. At some point after landing in Chicago early in the morning, Kelly and Smith made a stop at Kelly's apartment where Smith raised reservations about Kelly's plan to marry Aaliyah, and Kelly responded, "Whose side was Smith on?" Kelly, Smith, McDavid, and Jameson then gathered at a Sheraton hotel suite where Aaliyah was waiting. Where were Aaliyah's parents while she was at this suite? Okay, then also let me stop right here because something else just came to mind. So Aaliyah couldn't perform. So at this time, R. Kelly is performing on Budfest, which was the Budweiser music festival that traveled during the summer. So Aaliyah was removed from the festival because of her age and the connection to Budweiser being, an alcoholic drink. So Aaliyah was moved. So why wasn't the other girls removed from the tour, or were they no longer part of the tour? I'm a little confused how they were all of a sudden traveling and then they weren't traveling. Now he's flying to be with Aaliyah because Aaliyah's been removed from the tour. So that was a little bit confusing to me. So Aaliyah, who was a minor and only had a school identification card, did not have identification showing she was 18 years old and therefore was not old enough to get a marriage license. Smith suggested to the group, which included Kelly, that he could get an identification card for Aaliyah from a local welfare office if he paid an employee cash. The group also discussed getting another piece of identification for Aaliyah from a friend of Kelly's who worked at a courier service facility. Okay, I thought the person that worked at the courier service was somebody that Demetrius knew. Now they're saying that he was a friend of Kelly's. And then also, where was Aaliyah's parents while Aaliyah was in Chicago, held up at the Sheraton waiting to get married to R. Kelly? Where were the parents at this point? Were they still in Detroit? Were they living in Chicago? Who came and picked Aaliyah up and brought Aaliyah to Chicago? And how did Aaliyah get back to Detroit where they lived? Okay, none of this is making sense to me. So after these discussions, Smith obtained $500 cash from McDavid and the group headed out to obtain the identification. Smith, Aaliyah, and Kelly drove to the public aid office, after which Smith went inside and offered $500 cash to a public aid employee to obtain a fraudulent ID for Aaliyah. The public aid office employee, who was a state government employee and not permitted by law to accept cash in exchange for creating the identification, took the cash and agreed to create an identification card for Aaliyah. Okay, was this this government employee ever charged with a crime? Were they arrested in connection with this RICO? Because now it seems to me like they are a part of the RICO, right? Because they broke the law in creating this fake ID. Kelly waited in the car while Aaliyah went inside, where the employee took Aaliyah's photograph and gave them the fraudulent identification card, a card for which Aaliyah provided none of the requisite documentation, was not eligible to receive, and even if eligible, would have taken approximately 30 days to be issued by the public aid office. No record of any legitimate identification card for Aaliyah was saved in the public aid office's files. Smith and Aaliyah returned to the car where Kelly was waiting, after which Kelly, Smith, Aaliyah, and the others went to a Federal Express, a courier copier, to obtain another excuse me, guys, to obtain another fake identification card for Aaliyah. After going inside the Federal Express with Smith, Aaliyah had her picture taken and was given a fake employment card. Okay. Where is the person that worked for Federal Express? Ain't that FedEx? They still in operation. Why wasn't that person in court to testify? Why wasn't the person at the public aid office in court to testify? And why was neither of these people charged with a crime? Like, was there documentation in 3500 material where the government actually talked to these people? Are these people deceased? Because at this point, this is a lot of hearsay, because I need these people front and center with their name out there in the public. Did they lose their job, lose their government benefits, lose their pension for performing in this act? Like, I'm real confused. So after obtaining the fraudulent identification cards, Kelly, Aaliyah, Smith, and McDavid went to the Illinois County Clerk's office to obtain a marriage license for Kelly and Aaliyah. Individuals seeking a marriage license were required to present two forms of identification: a state identification card, driver's license, or domestic or foreign passport, birth certificate, consular card, or baptism records. Illinois Department of Public Aid. Hold on, guys. Okay. My throat then got dry here. Give me a moment. Okay. Illinois Department of Public Records identification cards were not among the regularly accepted forms of identification. Initially, the clerk hesitated to accept the fraudulent identifications presented by Aaliyah. However, McDavid intervened and convinced the clerk to accept the identifications. Kelly and Aaliyah thereafter filled out and signed an application for marriage, which was not a publicly available document, on which Kelly listed his driver's license number, and then they put the number up here, and Aaliyah listed an Illinois Department of Public Aid identification number, and they provided that as their forms of identification. The marriage application also falsely listed Aaliyah's date of birth as January 16, 1976, and age as 18 years old, despite Aaliyah's true date of birth being in January 1979, and her occupation as messenger service. Based on the information provided, the clerk's office issued a marriage license to Robert S. Kelly and Aaliyah D. Holton. Kelly, Smith, and the others also visited a friend of Kelly's, Keith Williams, in order to find someone to officiate the wedding. Williams recommended a friend, Nathan Edmond, a church elder and licensed minister, who agreed to officiate the wedding. You guys, I can't remember. Did Keith Williams testify to all of this? That he was the one? I think he did. I think he was the person, when I was trying to come up with the 50 witnesses, I think he might have been one of the people that I had forgotten about. I do remember him. I do remember him testifying. Okay, so after obtaining what they needed to officiate the wedding, Kelly, Aaliyah, Smith, and the others returned to the Sheraton Hotel suite. When Edmund arrived at the hotel suite, he was asked to sign a confidentiality agreement. Edmund refused, but promised not to speak to anyone about the wedding. Edmund, who had never before met Kelly or Aaliyah, then conducted a hasty 10-minute ceremony in the hotel suite where he married Kelly and Aaliyah, who were each dressed in jogging suits. The marriage license signed by Edmund was filed with the Cook County Clerk's office, and a certification of marriage stating that Kelly and Aaliyah were married on August 31st, 1994 was issued. A few minutes after the ceremony, Kelly, Smith, and Jameson left to fly back to the concert venue to continue the defendant's tour. Aaliyah did not leave with them. Shortly after the secret wedding, the marriage was annulled. Subsequently, on August 25, 2001, Aaliyah died in an airplane crash. Okay, I had a question, because during the testimony from the clerk's office, I done lost my page, y'all. From the clerk's office, they stated that the marriage could not take place on the same day that the marriage license was issued. And I thought, okay, I'm scrolling back up here to see, because I thought they flew in, that it was August 30th when they flew in to Chicago. Okay, so maybe it was, I thought he left the tour on the 30th. They flew overnight, and then he got into Chicago on the 31st. So August 1994. So maybe they conveniently left out these dates, because they just say August up there. But you guys get what I'm saying? I think that the lady at the clerk's office said that the marriage could not take place on the same day that the license was issued. It seemed like the marriage license was signed on the same day. But of course, they conveniently left out the date of when the marriage, the date that the license was issued. So I don't want to give you guys false information, but that was my understanding, was that all of this happened on the 31st, which would have made the marriage not legal to begin with. Okay, anyway, they only put the date of the marriage. They omitted the date about when he flew to Chicago, because I know he left Georgia that night after his show and flew, and then it was like, do you guys remember, it was in the early morning hours? Like maybe they caught the plane at 2 in the morning and they got to Chicago like 4 or 5 in the morning. Do you guys remember that? If you remember, put it in the comments whether that was the 30th or because everything happened on the same day. You guys remember? All of this happened within 24 hours. So how did they get the license and perform the marriage on the same day? Which would have voided the marriage, because according to the clerk, you had to get married 24 hours after the license was issued. Do you guys remember me telling you that when I was reading the court documents, the transcripts? Or am I losing my mind? But anyway, we're going to move on. So Stephanie was born in mid-October 1981. She grew up in Chicago and ultimately finished high school at the Chicago Academy of the Arts, where she graduated in approximately June 1999. During the summer of 1998, when Stephanie was 16 years old, she was at the Rock and Roll McDonald's in downtown Chicago with her then boyfriend and 2 other friends on a double date. While standing by herself at the register, a man approached Stephanie and asked her age. She responded that she was 16. The man then asked if she knew who R. Kelly was, and she responded she did. The man gestured over to Kelly, who was seated in a nearby booth looking at Stephanie, and told Stephanie that Kelly wanted her to call him, and then gave Stephanie a handwritten note with Kelly's phone number on it. Thereafter, Stephanie talked to her friends at the McDonald's about what had occurred and then threw the phone number away, as she did not intend to call Kelly at the time. So she was a pretty smart girl. She knew what was going on. And then, guys, I meant to mention this earlier about all these grown-ass people that allegedly were involved with all of this, but none of them were charged. That is what is like really bothering me. And I would love for whatever sealed documents to get unsealed so we can see who exactly have received deals. But my thing is, if you didn't testify during the case or didn't provide information that was used in the case, then you can't have a deal, right? So like if they talked to the FedEx guy and he said, yeah, I did give him that ID, wouldn't he have had to come to court to testify that he gave the ID? Or wouldn't they have had to mention in the court case that we have a signed statement from this person that they issued the fake ID? So, like, none of this makes sense that we're involving, this testimony is involving all these people, but none of these people were in court to verify the story that Demetrius Smith was telling. Like, nobody was there in court to verify that all these people, because even the Larry Hood guy testified, and he was like, if he was in an apartment, he was a police officer, if he was in an apartment and there were teenage girls coming in having sex, then he would have been obligated to arrest Mr. Kelly or file a report with the police saying, because then that would have made him part of the crime. So why wasn't he charged if they believed that he was there in the room? You guys get what I'm saying? So anyway, it's just the more I read, the more questions I have, and that's why I say a reasonable jury could not have believed this information, because they would have been in that deliberation room to this day asking all these questions that I'm asking you if they were a reasonable jury. So approximately 1 year later, in the summer of 1999, when Stephanie was 17 years old, she met Kelly. And then 17 is the magic number because 17 is the legal age, okay, of consent in Chicago with no limitations. So a 17-year-old could be with a 97-year-old man and it wouldn't be illegal. So during that summer, Stephanie worked as a barista at a coffee shop located in a hotel in downtown Chicago on a 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift. What 17-year-old is working at 5 o'clock in the morning? But anyway, what am I talking about? Because I used to work at a nursing home and we used to have to be to work at 6 in the morning, especially on the weekends. So during a shift, the co-worker informed Stephanie that R. Kelly was at the Nike store just around the corner from the hotel on Michigan Avenue, also known as the Magnificent Mile. Stephanie decided to go to the Nike store to see if Kelly would remember her and to ask him if he would listen to her friend Catherine sing. Catherine was Stephanie's classmate at the Chicago Academy of the Arts, specializing in music, and was an aspiring singer at the time. And I don't recall Stephanie testifying either to verify this story. When Stephanie arrived at the Nike store and was walking in, Kelly was walking out. Stephanie asked Kelly if he remembered her, and he indicated he did. Like, this man really remembered you after a year with all the people that he met. Stephanie told Kelly she wanted to ask him a question, and he invited her to walk with him to his car, which Stephanie did. And Kelly invited Stephanie inside his car. Inside the car, Stephanie asked Kelly if he would meet her friend Catherine, who had a great voice and potentially help Catherine with her career. Kelly told Stephanie he thought he could arrange that, but he'd like to get to know me, and he also said that he likes to cuddle, and would I be okay with that? To which Stephanie responded yes. When Kelly then gave Stephanie his phone number and told Stephanie to call him, which she ultimately did. Is there any coercion here? Like, I'm missing the coercion part. Approximately a week or two later, Stephanie saw Kelly again at his recording studio just off of Chicago Avenue on the edge of the Cabrini Green neighborhood. And you guys notice that he always gives them the choice. Like, he gives them the phone number. And if they never call, he probably could care less and don't even remember who none of these chicks are. But he gives them the number and they make the decision to give him a call. So there is no coercion going on anywhere. So Stephanie was buzzed into the studio, and one of Kelly's employees brought her to a room on the second floor, told Stephanie to stay there and wait for Kelly, and then left. Stephanie waited for Kelly alone in the room for several hours until he came into the room. The two conversed for a period of time and ultimately had intercourse in the room that day. Once again, this is obviously somebody who was already active, because you just don't be giving it up like that. Or like, she really wanted Catherine to get that audition and was willing to do whatever to help her friend. I ain't had no friend that I was about to sleep with no grown man in order to get her anything. So during their conversation, among other things, Kelly told Stephanie he wanted her to call him daddy. Following the encounter, Stephanie continued to see Kelly for approximately 6 months, mostly at his studio. Kelly had sex with Stephanie essentially every day they saw each other. At various times, Stephanie would be picked up and driven to the studio by one of Kelly's employees and driven home by an employee. During their interactions, Kelly was one of two ways. During their interactions, Kelly, then they have in quotation, was one of two ways. He was either very nice and charming, jovial, or he was very controlling and intimidating. He raised his voice at Stephanie, and he could put the fear of God in her very quickly. And that was a quote from Stephanie. Stephanie's sexual interactions with Kelly were humiliating. Stephanie described those interactions as follows. He would be very specific in how he wanted me to be. He would put me in positions that he wanted me to be in. He would tell me what he wanted me. He'd tell me to get undressed, and then he would position my body in a way, and he would then say, all right, I'm going to go, and when I come back, I want you to be just like this. So I would just be completely naked with my butt in the air and just like waiting there for him to come have his way. Okay, girl, that sounds like a choice to me. And then men, y'all know y'all like what y'all like, how y'all like it. So y'all better not be instructing these women how to perform for y'all, because then that could be part of a RICO. If you telling her, baby, do it this way, move faster, turn around, let me get it from the back. Any of that you telling your woman could be seen as coercion. Okay, so don't be instructing women on how to please y'all. Okay. And women, the same for you, because women have become very liberated and be telling that man how to get them the D. So ladies, don't be doing that, okay? Okay. So when Kelly returned to the room and Stephanie was not in the position he told her to be in, Kelly became very disappointed and angry, yelling at her. Kelly also often ejaculated on Stephanie's face and instructed her on what sounds she should make during sex. Now, y'all, put a 1 in the comments if the man has ever ejaculated in your face while you were giving him oral. Because y'all know that didn't happen. Because I done seen that happen in some movies before. Y'all better knock it off, okay? So, on one occasion, after watching the defendant play a basketball game, Stephanie and Kelly went inside the passenger portion of the SUV. The front driver and passenger seats were occupied by Kelly's employees. Why? And then they always put the Kellys. Like this is like the company. They put the in front of Kelly as I'm reading this. Like, child. So while inside, Kelly told Stephanie to give him some oral. Stephanie did so, but it was really disgusting because he had just played basketball for an hour, and she was really ashamed while she was doing it. Girl, you should have been ashamed. You should have said, do you have some wet wipes to wipe that off and clean that up? Because I'm not doing that to your funky behind. Like, girl. And tried to do it quietly and get it done. Kelly stopped her and said that she needed to make noises while she was performing oral on him because he wanted the other people in the car to know that she was giving him oral. Okay, so once again, we got more grown people witnessing improper behavior, right? But ain't nobody saying nothing. And these people aren't part of the indictment. So within the first month or two of Stephanie having met Kelly, Stephanie again asked Kelly if he would meet her friend Catherine. Kelly agreed, and Catherine, Stephanie, and Stephanie's mom went to his studio for this purpose. Okay, so did Stephanie's mom know at this point that her daughter was sexing on Kelly? Or was this her first knowledge that the two of them knew each other? So at the studio, Catherine performed the song for Kelly. Kelly indicated that Catherine could sing, but seemed unimpressed and quickly dismissed the three of them as he was not thrilled about Stephanie's mom being there. Oh, Lord. Okay, on either the first or second occasion that Stephanie visited Kelly's studio, Kelly asked Stephanie how old she was, and Stephanie responded that she was 17. At some point after this conversation, while Stephanie was still 17, Kelly videotaped Stephanie engaging in contact with him. Stephanie had agreed to meet Kelly at his studio and was waiting for him in a room at the studio when he called her and told her he was on his way to pick her up and wanted to make a video of them. Thereafter, Kelly drove Stephanie to his house in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago on George Street. Upon their arrival at the house, Kelly quickly got a video camera, instructed Stephanie to come around the walkway at the entrance, and began filming as she entered the frame, instructing Stephanie to undress and walk over to the sofa. At this point, Kelly was holding the video camera, which was a large VHS video camera. After Stephanie walked over to the sofa as Kelly instructed, Kelly came up behind her and started having sex with her. At that point, Kelly had placed the video camera on the table in front of Stephanie. Stephanie was completely nude, and the video camera was facing her and was recording. Kelly was penetrating Stephanie vaginally from behind. Kelly then indicated he would retrieve a dildo and wanted Stephanie to put the dildo in her mouth as he had sex with her. Kelly did so and then put the dildo inside Stephanie's mouth and continued to have intercourse with her from behind. While this occurred, the VHS camera remained right in front of Stephanie, facing Stephanie and her private areas while she was completely naked and was still recording. In approximately October 1999, Stephanie traveled to Orlando, Florida for a long weekend to see Kelly and her friend Catherine. Okay, were they unaccompanied by their parents? And was she still 17 at the time, or had she turned 18 by then? What did her mother have to say about her and Catherine going to Orlando? So Kelly was recording music in Orlando and had previously asked Stephanie to meet him in Orlando and said she could bring her friend Catherine. Kelly paid for their travel, and one of his employees made the travel arrangements. Upon their arrival in Orlando, Stephanie and Catherine were taken to a furnished rental house in a cul-de-sac. They stayed there for a long time, a few days, without any contact from Kelly, and just sat in the house alone. Okay, there's a note. It says Stephanie, answered my question about the age. Stephanie turned 18 in mid-October 1999. She could not recall whether this trip occurred before or after her 18th birthday. Okay, thank you. And did not leave the house at all. On the last day of their trip, Kelly showed up at the house and took Stephanie to a recording studio. At the studio, Kelly told Stephanie that he wanted to record her giving him oral, and then he proceeded to do just that. This time, Kelly used a handheld video camera smaller than the one he had used to video record Stephanie at his residence in Lincoln Park, to record Stephanie's face as Kelly's you-know-what was in her mouth, and she was giving him oral. Kelly ejaculated on Stephanie's face and did not let her wipe it off, instead telling Stephanie she had to walk down the hall to another bathroom to wipe her face. Okay, well, if there wasn't nothing in there to wipe her face with, then okay. I guess she could have used the sheet to wipe her face, but then that would have made the sheet dirty. So I could see her going down the hall to get something to wipe her face. But anyway, Stephanie felt humiliated. Thereafter, Kelly drove Stephanie back to the house as she cried in the car. She and Catherine then returned to Chicago. Okay, did Stephanie share all of this with Catherine? Did Catherine testify at the trial? I don't remember Catherine being there to confirm that any of this happened. And if she was already intimate with him and had been recorded in Chicago, so if I was so uncomfortable with somebody trying to record me, even if I felt like they would have been angry or mad, I still would have said I don't want to be recorded. But you allowed him to record you, then you continued to see him. So then you got on an airplane with your friend and flew to Orlando to be with him. So how humiliated was she if she continued the behavior? And she's doing all this so that if he had already told Catherine she couldn't sing, so that didn't even make no sense that she would go to Orlando hoping that this was going to be an opportunity for Catherine, because he already said she wasn't good enough to be a singer. So what was the point of continuing the relationship and going to Orlando and all of this stuff? And what was Catherine doing when all this was going on? Was she not asking questions? Child, Catherine was on them ride or die friends that know you being stupid, but they ain't gonna tell you that you being stupid. So, child, anyway, let's see. Okay, I lost my place again. Let me go back up here. So they returned to Chicago. So following this trip, Stephanie did not want to see Kelly anymore. She felt used and humiliated and degraded, and she just didn't want to be abused anymore. Stephanie did, however, see Kelly again to stay in his good graces because she wanted Kelly to give her the tapes he had made of her. She discussed getting the tapes from Kelly or having him destroy them in person with Kelly on 2 occasions, but Kelly did not do so. Thereafter, Stephanie called Kelly and asked him again to give her the tapes or destroy them. Kelly suggested he would consider it if she came to see him. However, Stephanie concluded from the 2 previous in-person discussions that Kelly had no intention of doing so, so she did not go to see him. That was the last time Stephanie spoke with Kelly. So during the course of her time with Kelly, Kelly made clear to Stephanie that she was not permitted to speak to other men. On one occasion, she was at a Houston's restaurant in Chicago with Kelly and 2 rappers whom Kelly referred to as Boo and Gotti, and y'all know they were a rap duo. Stephanie was not, and then why didn't Boo and Gotti get called to testify to verify that there actually was a dinner? Okay, that he actually was at dinner at Houston's with this woman. So Stephanie was not allowed to speak to Boo and Gotti during the meal, but heard Kelly tell them that he likes young girls and that people make such a big deal of it, but it really isn't a big deal because even look at Jerry Lee Lewis. He's a genius and I'm a genius, and we should be allowed to do whatever we want because of what we give to this world. Child, has Boo and Gotti did any interviews since this trial came up where they confirmed that this actually happened? I need to search YouTube because I don't remember them coming out or anybody trying to reach out to them and interview them to see if this actually happened. So now let's move on to Addie. On September 2nd, 1994, Addie, a 17-year-old girl, attended the Budweiser Superfest concert at the Miami Arena in Miami, Florida with a friend. At the end of the concert, and this is the one that I just really found unbelievable. At the end of the concert, Kelly made an announcement that women over the age of 18 could go backstage. Given the announcement, Addie did not intend to go backstage despite having all access passes because she was under the age of 18. However, a few minutes after the concert ended, 2 African American men who appeared to be Kelly's associates how did they appear to be his associates? Okay. So, child, they approached Addie and her friend and asked them if they wanted to go backstage to get Kelly's autographs. And if you guys don't remember or didn't hear the reading of the transcript for this one, Addie's mom had a friend who worked at the radio station, and she got them this backstage passes, and she was actually there with them. And the mom might have been there also, but somehow we lose the mom and the friend, and then suddenly Addie is backstage with her friend with R. Kelly, okay, and being assaulted. So we don't know what happened to the mama, what happened to the mama friend, who was chaperoning these underage girls at this concert, who probably shouldn't have even been at the concert since they were 17. Okay. But anyway, the 2 African American men who appeared to be the associates, not sure how she determined they were associates, approached them. So the men who did not ask Addie or her friend whether they were over 18 escorted Addie and her friend backstage to Kelly's dressing room. At no point while they were backstage did anyone check Addie or her friend's identification.
Addie with his signature.
Addie and her friend were brought to a dressing room
who was a trained dancer who ultimately attended a performing arts conservatory, also mentioned to Kelly that she was an aspiring artist, in response to which Kelly told Addie the name of his hotel, suggested that Addie come by his hotel room for an audition, and wrote down a hotel number, room 1301, on her program. But we don't know what hotel it was, just the room number. So towards the end of their discussion, Addie told Kelly that she was not sure she was allowed to be in the dressing room because she was only 17 years old. There's that magic number, 17. Kelly then spoke to 2 of his bouncers, and quickly thereafter the bouncers escorted everyone from the dressing room except Addie and her friend, who the bouncers told to stay. As a result, Addie and her friend were left alone in the dressing room with Kelly. And all this media that was in there, And I believe this was, what year was this? Was this before the Aaliyah story or after the Aaliyah story? Let's see. Okay, so this was 19 September. When did the Aaliyah thing allegedly happen? Because this was September 2nd, 1994. Hold on a second. Let me go back up and get the year for Aaliyah. Okay. My mind wasn't playing tricks on me because allegedly he then flew from Georgia left Georgia on August 30th, 1994 to rush to Chicago because he needs to marry Aaliyah on August 31st. And then after marrying Aaliyah, he flew back to the tour. And then on September 2nd, just 2 days later, after he's had this alleged scare with Aaliyah where he supposedly got her pregnant and had to marry her and all of this other nonsense, here he is with Addie. Hasn't learned his lesson. Okay, still messing with the 17-year-olds, right? Okay, and so we're in this dressing room where they done told the media to leave. Okay, and nobody saw these two young girls and been like, well, dang, he made us leave, but he still got these two young girls, and we still don't know what happened to the mother or the mother's friend who brought them to the. Well, actually, I think they drove themselves to the concert, but they were seated with the mother's friend. And so I guess she was okay with them going off with the two men who appeared to be Kelly's associates and doing whatever. The mother friend didn't stay and wait for them to come back. And since this was a radio event, why wasn't the mother's friend with the radio station part of the media that was in there interviewing them and did not see that the two girls that she brought to the concert, the two underage girls that she brought to the concert, were still in the room after everybody else was ushered out? But this is what they want us to believe, okay? So, this was September 2nd, y'all. 2 days after he allegedly married Aaliyah. Okay. So not only did she lie about having the all access page passes and was under 18 because the passes were for people that were over 18, because this was again the Budweiser Superfest tour that was going on, but the parents are allowing their underage kids to go to this adult event that's being held by a company that makes alcoholic beverages. Okay. Let me go back to where I was, where they ushered everybody out. He signed the program with his signature, gave her the room number, but not the name of the hotel for her to remember. She told him that, she was only 17 years old. Okay, so they ushered the people out of the room. Nobody stopped to say, well, why are you keeping them two little young girls back there? But anyway, once alone in the room, Kelly began talking about a song he was working on for a movie soundtrack, which he then played for them. Kelly then asked Addie and her friend to play a game with him to see which girl could kiss better. Kelly kissed Addie's friend and then Addie. Addie initially kissed Kelly back and then began pulling away. But Kelly became more aggressive, holding Addie's wrist and moved her towards the dressing area where he unzipped her shorts, pulled them down, and penetrated her vagina with his penis. Kelly also attempted to get Addie's friend to participate by grabbing Addie's friend's hands, but the friend refused. After Kelly finished having intercourse with Addie, Addie, who was in a state of shock, pulled up her shorts, opened the door, which they had to unlock, and ran out of the room with her friend. And I assumed that there were no members of the media or from the radio station or security or employees of the venue who were lingering around in the hallway, backstage, sweeping, cleaning, whatever it was that they needed to do, who saw these two frantic teenagers running out of this dressing room in shock after having been assaulted. But we're going to move on over to number 7, which was Kate. And Kate met Kelly in 2001 when she was 27 years old and living in Chicago. Kate had a relationship with Kelly and at times with other women at Kelly's direction. Because Kate knew Kelly had multiple partners, she expressed to him that she was concerned that she might contract an STD and asked him whether he would use protection, but he said he would not. Kate also asked Kelly if he was okay referring to whether he had any STDs. I'm not referring to. If he was okay referring to. Okay, that makes no sense. But anyway, to whether he had any STDs, and he did not disclose to her that he had any. Whether she was still in a sexual relationship with Kelly and not in a sexual relationship with anyone else while she was still. Okay, Kate contracted genital herpes. Kate told Kelly that she believed that he had transmitted an STD to her, but Kelly did not respond. In 2004, Kate retained Susan Loggins, a lawyer, to assist her with a possible legal action against Kelly. She ultimately reached a settlement whereby Kelly paid her $200,000, and she released Kelly and others, including Darryl McDavid, from any further liability for giving her genital herpes, and agreed to not make any public statements about their relationship. As a result of Kate's genital herpes diagnosis, she has told potential future sexual partners about her diagnosis, and many of those relationships have not come to fruition as a result of that disclosure. So, if she was so advised and had sense enough to ask him to wear a condom and he refused to wear one, at that point she should have terminated the relationship. But the thing about Kate, she wasn't really accusing him of anything, and during her testimony she actually stated that after the settlement she tried to resume the relationship with him, and he refused to. You didn't sue the man for $200,000. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with you either, but she stated that she did want to still be in a relationship with him and that she really liked him, and I guess other than the whole herpes thing, she was okay with him. And I was trying to figure out, did they go through Susan Loggins' records? Did they subpoena her records? And that's how they found out about Kate, because Kate didn't seem to have any malice against him. So then we move over to number 8, which is Sonya. So on August 12, 2003, Sonya, who was working as a radio station intern, met Kelly while he was at a mall in Utah when she was approximately 21 years old. And you guys know Sonya was the one that the jury did not believe, because her story was so crazy and far-fetched. But they didn't believe her. He was found not guilty on the counts that had to do with Sonya. So Sonya, hoping to get an interview with Kelly to kickstart her career at the radio station, spoke to Kelly's manager. Kelly did not agree to an interview at the time, but at some point during the interaction, Kelly or a member of his entourage gave Sonya a ripped off piece of paper with Rob and Kelly's telephone number written on it. Sonya, who was with a friend at the time, also took a photograph with Kelly and her friend in front of his tour bus. Sonya told her boss at the radio station about meeting Kelly, and still hoping to get an interview with Kelly, contacted Kelly at the number she had been given. And let me go back up because they had a note here. So the note has to do with Sonya, and it says, while the jury ultimately found racketeering acts 3 and 4, which alleged certain crimes related to Sonya, not proven, the evidence presented at trial concerning Sonya also constituted evidence of the existence of the enterprise, the means and methods of the enterprise, and the defendant's pattern of racketeering. Sure, whatever. Okay. So, Kelly did not agree to a telephone interview, but subsequently invited Sonya to travel to his studio, referred to as the Chocolate Factory in Chicago, Illinois, purportedly to conduct an interview of him. And for all we know, Sonya could have been a mole, because why we didn't hear from the radio station manager who came to testify and confirmed that Sonya indeed worked for the radio station and that she did go to his studio to do this interview. And Sonya's story was so far-fetched, where she was talking to people on the telephone. Then she claimed he assaulted her, but then she hugged him and kissed him goodbye, but remained at the studio for an undisclosed amount of time before she actually left and went home. And I'm just kind of thinking that maybe they planted Sonya there so that the jury would find her not guilty, so that they can say that they had put on this case, and hey, look at here, the jury didn't believe this person here. But anyway, Sonya's story was laughable. Okay, so Kelly did not agree to a telephone interview, but subsequently invited Sonya to travel to his studio, referred to as the Chocolate Factory in Chicago, Illinois. One of Kelly's associates arranged Sonya's airplane tickets, which Kelly paid for. Following her travel to Chicago in March 2004, Sonya was directed to go to the Chocolate Factory recording studio. In the reception area, one of Kelly's associates asked Sonya if she needed protection, which he explained after Sonya asked for clarification because she did not understand his question meant condoms. Sonya, surprised by the question, responded, "No, I'm not here for that." She was then escorted to a small, poorly lit, windowless room with a couch and table within the studio by one of Kelly's associates, who also took and searched her suitcase without consent. Shortly thereafter, while in the room, another associate entered, took and made a copy of Sonya's driver's license, searched through her cellular telephone, and made a list of her telephone contacts, directed her to sign what she believed to be a non-disclosure agreement, advised her of rules that she had to abide by, including that she was not allowed to look up, talk to anyone, or do anything, told her that Kelly would come in soon, and then left the room, closing the door behind him. Sonya was thereafter kept against her will for approximately 3 to 4 days in the room, which was locked from the outside without sustenance. And I think they determined that that was a lie, that the door didn't lock from the outside, that it locked from the inside. And then there was no evidence presented that stated that she was held against her will, because she went to use the bathroom, she went and took a shower to change her clothes and all of this good stuff. And I'm thinking, if I'm being held against my will, I'm not trying to go take a shower and put on no night clothes. I'm going to be asking you, can I get up out of here? Can I go? So then it goes on to say, after realizing she was locked in the room, scared, Sonya banged on the door and repeatedly contacted the front desk of the studio using a telephone located in the room, asking to be let out for food and water and to use the restroom. She was told, however, by Kelly's associates that these requests would need to be approved by Kelly. On a few limited occasions, Sonya was allowed to use the restroom, but was generally escorted back and forth by one of Kelly's associates, during which time she was able to hear sounds consistent with people having sex in other rooms. Finally, one of Kelly's associates brought her food and a beverage in a cup. Almost immediately after taking a few bites of the food and a few sips of the drink, she became extremely tired. She awoke sometime thereafter, confused to find that her underwear, which she had previously been wearing, had been removed and placed on the arm of the couch, a wetness in her vaginal area and on her thighs, and Kelly in the corner of the room doing up his pants and belt. All of these circumstances made it apparent that Kelly had assaulted Sonya while she was unconscious. After Sonya rose from the couch, Kelly hugged her, grabbed her buttocks, told her he would return shortly, and left the room. Shortly thereafter, one of Kelly's associates entered the room, told Sonya that Kelly would not be returning, told her not to tell anyone about her time at the studio, made her sign another confidentiality agreement, and said, "Don't F with Mr. Kelly," which she took as a threat. Sonya, who did not previously have and could not have afforded her own return ticket home, signed the agreement and was then allowed to fly home. Why you didn't go straight to the police if all of this happened? Because they would have been able to gather evidence and all this other stuff, right? And to be honest with you, they kind of mixed that story up, because the way they just told that is not how the transcripts read. So they playing games, y'all. Because if you go back and watch that video, which I will drop above, you can hear the actual transcript of her testimony. and see how they are switching things up and making it seem a way that it really wasn't. So then we move on to number 9, Alexis. So Alexis was born in early July 1990 on March 26, 2006. When Alexis was 15, Alexis met Kelly after one of Kelly's concerts in Jacksonville, Florida. A member of Kelly's inner circle told Alexis and her friends that Kelly wanted to meet Alexis. Kelly arranged to meet Alexis at a Jacksonville mall the following day, and they met on his tour bus. When Alexis signed a non-disclosure agreement, a friend drove Alexis to the mall because Alexis was just 15 and did not yet have a driver's permit. Once again, where was Alexis' parents when their 15-year-old daughter jumped in a car and drove from Jacksonville to Miami? Thereafter, Kelly arranged for his bus driver, Terry Allen, to transport Alexis by bus from Jacksonville to Miami to meet Kelly in Miami. His runners arranged for Alexis to travel by airplane to meet Kelly in Chicago, including when she was 16 and 17 years old. Alexis first had contact with Kelly in Chicago and again on most occasions that she saw him, and Kelly did not use protection and never told her that he had contracted an STD. Now, I am going to have to go back and read Alexis' story because I thought Alexis was the one that met him with her parents. And her and the parents used to hang out with him all the time. Was that not who she was? Or is that the cake girl? No. I'm going to have to go back and look that one up, y'all. Because this story didn't sound familiar to me. So then we move on to number 10, Lewis and Alex. And you guys know that Lewis is the guy that was part of the scheme to bribe the Richard Arline guy who has yet to be sentenced. And remember, he was cooperating with the government. He was the one that was trying to bribe Azriel not to testify against R. Kelly, the one that got Nicole tied up in this Curcio hearing because allegedly she was on the phone call and called herself representing Azriel. And of course, no, I don't think any of that came out in the hearing. So that's who Lewis is. And then Alex claims that he was a friend of Lewis who was introduced to R. Kelly by, not Lewis, Richard. They called him Lewis in the case. And he was like a crazy person on the stand. He was off the chain. But anyway, Lewis was born on February 1989. In 2006, when Lewis, an aspiring musical artist, was 17 years old and in his senior year of high school, and there's that magic number of 17 again, Kelly gave Lewis his telephone number after Lewis helped him at a McDonald's in Markham, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago where Lewis was working. Lewis told his mom about meeting Kelly, and his mom later called the telephone number Kelly gave Lewis and told Kelly that Lewis was an aspiring musician. Kelly invited Lewis and his family to a Christmas party at Olympia Fields, which they attended. And then there's a note at the bottom. I'm going to read the note before I continue. So, back to Alexis. Alexis did not recall the dates of her travel, but she recalled that when she traveled to Miami, Kelly ruptured his appendix. Other evidence established that Kelly ruptured his appendix while he was in Miami for the Super Bowl in February 2007. Alexis testified that when she was under 18 years old, she only traveled by airplane to see Kelly and recalled that on one such trip to Chicago, she lost her luggage. Phone records established that while her cell phone was in Chicago, Alexis called American Airlines telephone number for lost baggage on March 25th and 27th, 2007, when Alexis was just 16 years old. A boarding pass Alexis provided to the government showed that another trip occurred in late July 2007, a few weeks after Alexis turned 17 years old. And then once again, why was Alexis not one of the victims if all this was going on? Because in Florida, the legal age of consent is 18. Like 18, if you're under 18, you cannot be having sex with anybody over 18, point blank, period. And so if you got this person with all this proof and who claimed that she was 16 or 17 when all this was happening, then she should have been one of the charged people as well. So then we're going to go on. Oh, then there was another note. Alexis testified that when she met Kelly, she may, in parentheses, have told Kelly that she was just 15 years old, and that Kelly's general response was just, there's nothing wrong with platonic friendship. Alexis conceded she ultimately had sexual contact with Kelly, including in her teens, but refused to admit that it occurred prior to 18 years old, despite that she saw Kelly on multiple occasions in Miami, Jacksonville, and Chicago while she was under 18 years old. So I guess she was uncooperative, so they didn't want to put her up on the witness stand. Oh, child. Okay, where was I at with this Lewis story? Okay, Kelly also invited Lewis to meet him in his recording studio, ostensibly so that Kelly could help Lewis as a musician. Instead, Kelly gave Lewis, still just 17 years old, oral sex and recorded their sexual encounters. On another occasion, Kelly directed a female to give Lewis oral also. Now, I want to point this out because people were talking about that the government had all these videotapes and all this stuff. And I believe that Lewis, also Richard Arline, had stated that he recorded him with an iPad, and we know that iPads were not out at this time. I think he was the one where the iPad hadn't come out yet. So we knew he was lying. Right, because he said that it happened in... Let me go back up here. So I'm going to be right, actual and factual with what I am telling you guys. So I think they conveniently, they didn't mention the year. So they're conveniently leaving out details because we had pointed out that the time that Lewis claimed, or Richard Arline claimed this happened, the iPad was not out yet. But they didn't include the year in this. But in any event, about the exhibit. So when people were saying, they had all these videotapes, you guys just missed it. You couldn't see on the transcripts if there was an exhibit. But when we were reading the transcripts, we could tell you, it states in the transcript that they're showing an exhibit, and it lists in the transcript what the exhibit is. And then it also tells you whether or not the exhibit is being shown, whether or not it's being shown to everybody in the courtroom, or it's only being shown to the jurors. And I believe that when it was only I don't know if the jurors had iPads that they were looking at the exhibits with, or if the exhibits were shown on the screen and then they blocked the people in the overflow rooms from seeing what was being shown. But it all is outlined in the transcripts that this is what's going on at this moment in the courtroom. And then also I want to note, as I'm reading this, it's telling you, it's giving like T 18:14 through 16. That means that this text is coming from those lines in the transcript, that this is where they're getting this information from. And then when they actually show an exhibit, it shows GX1, it's a GX, which is government exhibit, and then it'll tell you the number of the exhibit. So where I have read to you guys where there were supposedly video recordings that were made, there wasn't a government exhibit there. So you get what I'm saying? So where people were saying, you just didn't see the video. No, it was because they didn't have a video to show. And I brought that up because we're coming up on the government exhibit in this transcript that I'm reading. So it says, while Lewis was still in high school, Lewis introduced Kelly to his best friend, Alex. And I can't remember Alex's real name, but I think I did a video on him. And I'll try to remember to drop a picture of Richard Arline and this Alex guy. So Alex, who was younger than Lewis, and Kelly gave Alex a piece of paper with his phone number. No exhibit here, okay? So Kelly began to communicate by phone with Alex when he was still 17 years old, and eventually began a relationship with Alex. And then we have a government exhibit 153. So there was something that Alex provided to them to prove that he knew him. So at Kelly's direction, Alex engaged in activity including intercourse with other women in Kelly's presence. Kelly regularly recorded Alex's encounters with Kelly and other women. Kelly, always in charge, directing the participants as to precisely what to do sexually with the women, at times appeared zombie-ish. Government exhibits 341, 342, and 343 depicted one such example where Kelly, naked from the waist down, directed Alice and another woman, not Azriel, to engage in oral and vaginal sex. Throughout, Alex and the woman do not smile and otherwise appear wholly unengaged, and Kelly directs every action, including by positioning the woman and Alex into various positions and records the encounter. Government Exhibit 342C, a still image showing Kelly position Alex's penis inside the woman. Vagina. Government Exhibit 342B, a still image showing Kelly holding the woman's hair and pushing her mouth back and forth onto Alex's. You know what? So, in 2019, Kelly directed both Richard and Alex to handwrite statements falsely denying that they ever had contact with Kelly. Sexual contact with him. So, they don't have proof that the two of them had sexual encounters, but they have proof that Alex and this other woman had sex and that Kelly was directing the sex. So it doesn't prove that he himself actually had sex with either one of these guys, which they were trying, and that's important because they was trying to make a big deal that, you know, he's gay and all of this. But we know that two men, that people have threesomes all the time, and the threesomes usually involve two men and a woman, but there are times where it is two women and a man. So that was that. Then we move on to number 11, which is lying Jerhonda Pace. So Jerhonda was born in April 1993. Jerhonda first encountered Kelly when she attended a court proceeding in Chicago, Illinois in April 2008 when Jerhonda was just 14 years old. In May of 2009, shortly after Pace turned 16 years old, a close associate, Bubba Jermaine Maxey, who we also know as Ruby Chris, invited Jerhonda to attend a party at Kelly's residence in Olympia Fields, Illinois. At the party, Jerhonda told Kelly that she was 19 years old when she was in fact 16 years old. Kelly and Jerhonda exchanged telephone numbers, and thereafter they began communicating on the phone. Within a few days, Kelly invited Jerhonda back to his residence in Olympia Fields and directed her to bring a swimsuit. One of Kelly's runners, Anthony, who Jerhonda identified through a photograph as Anthony Navarro, and Anthony Navarro was one of the people that testified, picked up Jerhonda at a nearby train station and transported her to Kelly's residence. When she arrived, Jerhonda was escorted to the pool area where she changed into her suit. Kelly met her there and directed her to walk back and forth and to remove her bathing suit, which she did. Kelly thereafter engaged in sexual contact with Jerhonda and then had sexual intercourse with her. Jerhonda then told Kelly that she was in fact 16 years old, not 19 years old as she had initially told him. Kelly's response was nonchalant, and he instructed her to act 21 years old and tell others that she was 19 years old. He did not use any protection and never disclosed to her that he had contracted an STD. Kelly took Jerhonda to the mirror room where she rested. Okay, I'm going to stop there because there's a note, and it says, because many of the government witnesses testified using a pseudonym or their first name only, the government will refer to all of the government's victim witnesses by their pseudonym or their first name, even where, as Jerhonda Pace did, they testified using their full name. Okay. So when she was ready to leave, Jerhonda texted Kelly, and a runner then brought her an envelope with $50 and took her to a nearby train station. Now, the issue we have with Jerhonda, first of all, when they talk about that mirror room, When she was in that bed taking pictures of herself looking up at that mirror room, because the mirror room was covered in mirrors and there were mirrors on the ceilings and on the walls and everything, and Jerhonda was recording herself or taking pictures of herself laying in the bed looking up at the mirror. Jerhonda was fully clothed. She had on all of her clothes. It did not appear that she had been naked or that she had been by the pool with the bathing suit on or anything. So I don't understand why she would have gotten fully dressed. If you already took off all your clothes and he told you to go into the room and wait, why would you put all of your clothes back on and get in the bed? Seemed like she would have put the bathing suit on, if anything, so that she could look all sexy laying in the bed. And so it was insinuated that Jerhonda actually broke into his house while he was on tour, while he was away from the house, and took those pictures laying in that bed in the mirror room. And then also, they love to admit the fact that she was at the courthouse line and carrying on at the trial during the previous year. And then also, Jerhonda's friend who she met at the hearing stated that the first time they went to Kelly's house was for a party, and that Jerhonda was not able to get into the party because she didn't have ID, and that they requested ID. So they just jumping over some other details. And then we're still trying to figure out why that friend did not testify, why the defense didn't get her there to testify and tell the story about what a liar Jerhonda was and how Jerhonda had lied the entire time that they were friends and that she wasn't trustworthy. So during the 6 months that Jerhonda spent with Kelly, Kelly continued to engage in intercourse with her, and Jerhonda contracted genital herpes. Jerhonda told Kelly, and he arranged for a doctor to examine her and give her medication. Who was the doctor? Was the doctor that testified that he diagnosed her? I mean, did he speak to the fact that he had given Jerhonda a prescription? I can't remember. So at Kelly's request, Jerhonda put Kelly in touch with Dominique, who was then 17 years old and who Jerhonda met through a fan group supporting Kelly. Dominique began to also spend time with Kelly at Olympia Fields. On one occasion, while Jerhonda was inside of Kelly's residence, Jerhonda learned that police officers arrived at the residence looking for the 17-year-old Dominique. Jerhonda learned about this when Kelly... Wait, hold on, guys. My computer's stuck. Jerhonda learned about this when Kelly put a telephone conversation between him and his lawyer on speaker phone in Jerhonda's presence. Police officer Garrick Amshow responded to Kelly's Olympia Fields residence on June 13, 2009. Once there, he spoke with Daryl McDavid. And then it says, in parentheses, government exhibit, subscriber record showing that 312-659-1040 belonged to Daryl McDavid. So Jerhonda was in regular telephone communication with Kelly between June 2009 and January 2010. Jerhonda went to Olympia Fields to meet Kelly on several occasions, on each of which she had sexual contact with him. At Olympia Fields, Jerhonda also learned about certain rules that Kelly had promulgated, including that she was not permitted to leave the room in Olympia Fields where she was staying. Now, 1 minute she was staying and the next minute she was coming and going as she pleased. When Jerhonda broke one of Kelly's rules or otherwise failed to meet his desires, Kelly physically assaulted her and told her that she would be punishment. Kelly regularly recorded Jerhonda engaging in sexual explicit activity. He used a Canon camera set up on a tripod, as well as his Apple iPhone. After he created the recordings, Kelly watched them and instructed Jerhonda on how to improve her techniques with Kelly. Kelly also had Jerhonda sign a confidentiality agreement and write letters that falsely claimed Jerhonda had stolen money and jewelry from Kelly. Her sister had arranged for her to falsely claim that Kelly gave her genital herpes, and 3, she worked for Kelly and was fired by Kelly. So in January 2010, when Jerhonda was still 16 years old, Jerhonda met Kelly at his Olympia Fields residence for the last time. When Kelly entered the room where Jerhonda had been waiting for Kelly, Jerhonda was using her cellular telephone and did not stand up and greet Kelly as his rules required, angering him. Now, a lot of what Jerhonda testified to is also what Faith testified to, so one of them copying the other. So Kelly then slapped her, choked her, and until she passed out, spit on her and told her to put down her head in shame. When she got up off the floor, Kelly and Jerhonda walked to a different room, sat down, and Kelly instructed her to perform oral on him. Jerhonda complied with Kelly's instructions, and when she finished, Kelly ejaculated on her face. Jerhonda used her t-shirt to wipe off Kelly's semen. Biological testing on the t-shirt later revealed the presence of sperm on the t-shirt and that the presence of a DNA profile for the recovered sperm matched Kelly's DNA. A DNA expert testified that the probability of randomly finding that DNA profile was 1 in 11 decillion, far smaller than the population of the Earth. Now, granted, it didn't show Jerhonda's DNA on the t-shirt, or maybe they didn't test the t-shirt for Jerhonda's DNA. And there is a lot of speculation that because Jerhonda and Dominique were friends and Dominique was living with him, that this actually was a t-shirt that Dominique had stolen from R. Kelly. Now, keep in mind, this was in January of 2009, and they just tested the shirt recently, I believe. Yeah, I think they tested the shirt during the trial. So 2001. So she's had this shirt for 10 years, unwashed, stored away in a drawer, I guess. I'm not sure. So anyway, shortly after, Jerhonda retained Susan Loggins to represent Jerhonda. In connection with that representation, Jerhonda gave Loggins' firm the t-shirt she had when she last saw Kelly and her cell phone. Loggins thereafter negotiated a settlement with Kelly, the terms of which required Kelly to pay $1.5 million split between Loggins and Jerhonda. Jerhonda later retained lawyer David Fish, who obtained the t-shirt and cell phone from Ms. Loggins' office. Fish retained the t-shirt and cell phone until Jerhonda requested their return on November 17, 2017. The following day, Jerhonda provided the t-shirt and they did the DNA in 2017. So Jerhonda provided the t-shirt and cell phone to a detective with the Olympia Fields Police Department, where the items were retained until they were provided to law enforcement agencies, including the Illinois State Police Laboratory, which conducted DNA testing on the t-shirt. Okay, so no, they did just test the shirt during the trial. So now, Jennifer Bongine could quickly argue this was a very popular Aristotle t-shirt that 1 million people probably have, and which really she can argue about Dominique or somebody else in that house giving Jerhonda the t-shirt, because she could have given the t-shirt to Loggins. Loggins didn't test the shirt. Then she gave the t-shirt to the David Fish guy, and he didn't test the shirt. So then it says, the following day, Jerhonda provided the t-shirt and cell phone to a detective with the Olympic Fields Department, where the items were retained until they were provided to other law enforcement agencies, including the Illinois State Police Laboratory, which conducted DNA tests. So she turned the shirt over to, and this is important, she turned the t-shirt over to the detectives on November 18, 2017. And I believe Dominique was still in the house at that time and could have easily given her, you guys see what I'm saying? Like, could have given her a shirt. Like, we didn't even confirm with the David Fish or the Susan Loggins lady who refused to come and testify if this was the same shirt. So they don't even know if these two attorneys had this same shirt, whether they can verify that it was this blue Aristotle shirt. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? And so she could have gotten a shirt from from gotten the Aristotle shirt from Dominique and then given it to the police. And that's the shirt that ended up being tested. But have they verified through the other two attorneys that this was the same shirt that she gave to them? So that's what I'm saying. So then we're moving on. We're moving on to Anna. So in approximately 2016, Anna met Kelly backstage at one of his concerts when she was approximately 20 years old, after Bubba Macy approached her and told her that Kelly wanted to meet her. After Kelly and Anna exchanged contact information at a meet and greet event in Kelly's dressing room, immediately after the concert, Kelly and Anna began to communicate. In or about 2016, Kelly started a relationship with Anna, during which time she regularly traveled to visit Kelly at his home in Johns Creek, Georgia, at various concert venues throughout the country, and at his Trump Towers apartment and studio in Chicago, Illinois. Anna's travel and hotel accommodations, which were paid for by Kelly, were generally arranged by one of Kelly's assistants. A few weeks into their relationship, Anna moved in with Kelly and began traveling with him to his performances around the country in his Sprinter van. During the course of the relationship, Kelly became increasingly controlling and promulgated several rules that he expected Anna to follow. These rules included 1. Calling Kelly daddy, 2. Not speaking to or looking at other men, 3. Obtaining approval from Kelly before doing anything, including using the bathroom, moving about the studio, obtaining food, leaving a room or the Sprinter, or going outside. 4. Not wearing makeup and wearing only baggy clothes and baseball cap unless otherwise allowed by Kelly. 5. Not having or using social media or the internet. And 6. Not conversing with Kelly's other girlfriends or assistants about personal matters. As a result of these rules, if Kelly was not present, Anna was required. Lord, who did we determine Anna was? Anna. Can't remember. Was required to ask one of his assistants to obtain authorization from Kelly for food or permission to go to the restroom, and on the occasions Kelly did not provide permission to use the restroom, Anna was forced to urinate in a cup. Okay, Anna is that fool girl, Halle Calhoun. Remember the wilding out girl? She became a wilding out girl, and I actually think she went back in 2020 because he called back some of the original people. So this is Halle Calhoun that we're talking about. It took me a second. So Kelly's other girlfriends, including Azriel and Jocelyn, also known as Joy, V, Juice, and Dominique, also known as Neek, were also required to follow these rules. Kelly also monitored Halle's telephone use and personal communications with others. On one occasion, when he discovered Halle still had a social media application on her cellular phone, Kelly had his assistant Lily watch Halle to make sure she deactivated the account. Kelly also recorded Halle using an iPad while she was in the Sprinter in order to document what she was doing and ensure she did not break his rules. Kelly regularly violently punished Halle in various ways when she violated his rules. For example, Kelly, who is 6'2", became enraged with Anna after one of his concerts because he suspected she had been using her cellular telephone, began yelling, grabbed Halle, who is 5'4" and 120 pounds, and broke her necklace, cutting her chest. After Halle snuck away to the airport without Kelly's knowledge, she attempted to fly home but did not have the funds to book a flight and so headed back to the hotel where they were staying. Kelly told Halle he would provide her with the flight home if she wrote a note stating that she had attacked Kelly. Halle wrote the notes as directed, the contents of which were dictated to her by him so that he could use it as protection in the future. On another occasion, Kelly smacked Halle in the face at his studio in Chicago for communicating with another man, which he discovered after searching through Halle's cellular phone. On yet another occasion, Kelly smacked Halle in the face in the lobby of a Miami hotel because he believed she was looking in the direction of an area where men were standing, a violation of one of his rules. Now, Halle had a phone with her the entire time, but remember they say they didn't have phones. They weren't allowed to have phones, but Halle here had a phone. And instead of Halle calling her mother and telling her mother to buy her that plane ticket or send her the money for the plane ticket or to get them the credit card number over the phone, she decided to go back to ask Mr. Kelly to buy her a plane ticket. Now, what sense does that make? Because if I feel like my life is being threatened, I'm trying to escape you, I'm calling everybody but you. I'm going to go there and plead and cry to the airline person and tell them that my life is in danger, and maybe they got a fund set up for people trying to escape domestic violence situations where they will give you a plane ticket. But no, she went back to the hotel. So, Kelly also violently spanked Halle on multiple occasions, which he recorded on his iPad as punishment for violating his rules. During these spankings, Kelly would hit Halle so hard that he caused her pain, bruised her body, and caused her to cry so hard snot came out of her nose. At times, Kelly also instructed Halle to text him that she liked being spanked, which was not true, after administering the spankings as punishment. Now, we know that this is that bondage stuff that's going on, because we saw it in 50 Shades of Grey, and the women actually do like it. So in addition to the spankings as a punishment, Kelly ordered Halle to walk back and forth while nude in high heels for up to approximately 30 minutes, instructing her to call herself denigrating and demeaning names. During these punishments, when Kelly would record using an iPad, Anna or Halle would become visibly upset and cry. At times during these punishments, Kelly would masturbate or have Halle engage in sex acts with him, which she did not want to do. As punishment for violating the rules, Kelly would also confiscate Halle's cell phone for upwards to a few months. Now, if Halle had any common sense, she would have had a backup phone on one of her many shopping trips that she went home, and when she was flying back and forth home to see her mom and all this other stuff, and when she was performing on Wild 'N Out, she would have bought herself a phone. So in addition, at Kelly's direction, Halle signed documents provided by Kelly's assistant that were for his protection that appeared to be non-disclosure agreements. Kelly also instructed Anna to write, or Halle to write, letters dictated by him in which she wrote embarrassing falsehoods about herself and her family and untrue blackmail schemes against the defendant. And that was shown in Government Exhibit 430A, B, C, D, and 449 that Kelly safeguarded in his storage facility for him to hold against or down the line if something were to happen or come about. On one occasion, Halle attempted to film herself writing one of these false letters ordered by Kelly to document that she was not wanting to write this and it was not truthful, but Kelly discovered the recording after searching through her cellular telephone and deleted it. Kelly also instructed Halle to video record herself on an iPad doing embarrassing and demeaning things, including things involving bodily fluids that caused her humiliation. Halle also witnessed Kelly instruct others to write similar letters, including Azriel and Jocelyn, and came across a similar letter written by Dominique in a drawer in Kelly's guest house. So Halle was just snooping around. Kelly also instructed Halle to have her mother relinquish her cellular telephone, remove her clothing, enter his sauna, and write a similar type of false letter claiming to have blackmailed Kelly in case Halle's mother were to come against him in any type of way, and as a condition of her visiting Halle. After her mother finished writing the letter, which she did so she could see her daughter, Halle gave it to Kelly's assistant, Diana Copeland. At Kelly's direction, Halle also engaged in sex with Kelly and others, and y'all know this wasn't no exhibit in that what I just read about this letter. And why didn't Halle's mother get on the stand and testify about this letter? So that she had to write in order to see Halle. So at Kelly's direction, Halle also engaged in sex with Kelly and others, including on multiple occasions with Azriel, Dominique, and Joy, and 2 occasions with Alex, who she knew only as nephew, an individual otherwise known to her, which Halle did not want to do and which Kelly recorded on an iPad. And there we have a government exhibit 68, and so that's the one where they were talking about Alex and about the video recording where it was Alex and this other woman, and then Kelly was directing and watching, but he wasn't participating. So during these encounters, Kelly was in charge directing the participants' conduct, and he admonished Halle if she did not appear enthusiastic. Kelly, whether engaged in sexual activity with just Halle or with multiple partners, never used a condom. At one point, Halle obtained a test for STDs. However, she never received her results because the doctor provided them to Kelly's assistant, Diana Copeland. Halle ended the relationship with Kelly in approximately December 2018 after deciding she can't do it anymore. And what she couldn't do anymore was deal with Azriel, not deal with Kelly, because Azriel was getting on everybody's nerves at this point. And then also, even though she didn't receive the results of the STD because she claimed the doctor gave them to Diana Copeland, and we're assuming that the doctor is the same doctor who testified. Why didn't she go to the doctor and get her own doctor once she left him and went home? Did she not go and get tested to make sure she didn't have any STDs so that she's not passing them on to future boyfriends? And then also, it says that she ended the relationship with Kelly in approximately December 2018, but there's a article where she was being interviewed. Was it the Shade Room? I think she was interviewed by the Shade Room in April of 2018, and she was there with her new boyfriend, claiming that her and R. Kelly were officially over. But then in her testimony, she says that it ended in December 2018. So that's something else for Jennifer Bongine to discredit Miss Halle, is to go and pull that Shade Room interview where she said that she had officially ended things and had moved on to a new boyfriend. So then we move on to Azriel, who I thought we had already talked about, but here she go again. So Azriel was born on or at the end of December 1997, which we know December 30th, 1997. Azriel first encountered Kelly at a concert in Orlando, Florida, where Kelly was performing in April of 2015 when Azriel was 17 years old and a junior in high school. At the concert, Kelly arranged for one of his employees or a member of his entourage to provide Azriel with a piece of paper with his phone number, which number Azriel thereafter called. During their initial communication over the telephone, Azriel told Kelly that she was an aspiring singer, and Kelly invited Azriel to audition for him at the hotel in Orlando where he was staying. Azriel also falsely told Kelly that she was 18, when she was in fact 17. Azriel thereafter drove to Dolphin Hotel in Orlando, where Kelly was staying. When Azriel arrived, Kelly engaged in oral sex with Azriel, and only after he was sexually satisfied did he listen to her audition. While at the hotel, following a frantic search by Azriel's parents, security personnel knocked on the hotel room door in search of a missing 17-year-old girl. Azriel told the security personnel that she was 18. Now see how they twisted the story up, because we know that it was the Orlando Police Department that knocked on that room door. But they saying that it was security personnel. But anyway, security personnel that she was 18 years old and presented the security personnel with her driver's license. The license provided that Azriel was in fact 17 years old, but the security personnel apparently did not confirm Azriel's age and instead relied upon her oral representation. Following their encounter at the hotel, Kelly arranged for Azriel to travel across the country to meet him while he was on tour and with the permission of her family. On April 29, 2015, Azriel traveled from her home in Orlando to Los Angeles. And then they have the ticket exhibit, with the tickets. Kelly's then assistant Cheryl Mike arranged for Azriel's travel. We got the proof there, government exhibits. Kelly had sexual contact with Jane while they were in Los Angeles, according to Jane, not proven. And there, Kelly began to teach the rules to Jane, Azriel, including that Azriel wear baggy clothing, that Azriel call Kelly daddy, and that Azriel tell Kelly whenever she left the room. Then they have exhibits of Azriel texting her mother on April 29, 2015, and, quote, be talking about rules. And we read the text exchange that Jennifer Bunjing presented in her motion of how the mother was coaching her the entire time. So mom knew where she was and condoned the foolishness that was going on. Then we have another text exhibit saying, but he got me in sweats. He ain't like my tights, showing my figure. And then Azriel texting her mother on May 3rd, 2015. Everything having fun. And Kel said, do not leave that room. Everyone having fun, F-U-N-D. And Kel said, do not leave that room. From Los Angeles, Azriel traveled to Stockton, California, and then Las Vegas. Azriel and Kelly first had intercourse at the hotel in Stockton. Kelly did not use a condom or other protection and did not tell Azriel that he had previously contracted herpes. When she traveled to Las Vegas, Kelly introduced her to Juice. During that trip, Azriel also tried to run some errands, but Cheryl Mack told her that she could not go anywhere without Kelly's permission. And then there was a exhibit of, I guess, a text message. And then also in the documents on the motion that Jennifer Bunjing filed, she did indicate that even if Azriel contracted the STD in California, because California and New York are two states that have penal codes about STDs and the punishment is only a misdemeanor, that California had ruled that their STD law was unconstitutional. But anyway, they charged him with that even though the law wasn't in effect. So after Azriel finished her junior year, she spent the summer with Kelly traveling to shows and staying at his studio in Chicago. In August of 2015, Azriel was diagnosed with genital herpes, leaving her so she could not walk, and she was devastated. And then they have a government exhibit for that. Before she sought medical attention, she told Kelly about the severe pain and that she felt. Kelly arranged for Juice to take Azriel to a doctor's office in downtown Chicago where a doctor prescribed medication for Azriel. And then I think these exhibits were text messages. I don't think they were actual doctor records. And then he was still friends with the doctor guy who testified. So why would he send her to a doctor's, unless it was his doctor's office that he sent her to? Anyway, when Azriel told Kelly about her diagnosis, Kelly appeared agitated and told Azriel she could have contracted it from someone else. When she subsequently had outbreaks of herpes, Kelly disparaged her. At the end of the summer, when Azriel was scheduled to return to Orlando to begin her senior year of high school, Azriel told Kelly that she was in fact just 17 years old and still in high school. Okay, I had a conversation with somebody about when she told them, and the person I was talking to actually believed that she didn't tell him until like 2018 when she would have been 20 years old, and that didn't make sense to me. But the person said that they had talked to people who were actually present when she told him the truth, and that it was in 2018 and not in 2015. So I didn't understand what point it would have made for her to tell the truth in 2018. And plus, it made no sense because he attended her first of all, he had to help with getting her into virtual school, right? So he knew she was already in high school in August of 2015. And then he attended her high school graduation the following year in 2017. So common sense, even if she didn't tell him, I'm only 17 years old, his brain should have told him, hey, wait a minute, she still got another year of high school, and hey, I'm at her high school graduation, so she couldn't be 18, 19 years old. You guys get what I'm saying? But anyway, according to her testimony, she told him in August of 2015. So beginning, let's see, that she was still in high school, Kelly arranged for Juice's mother to serve as Jane's or Azriel's legal guardian until she turned 18 years old, and for Azriel parents to enroll her in remote schooling. So he already knew that she was 17. So beginning in September 2015, Kelly paid for Azriel to return to Chicago. When Kelly began a tour in Brooklyn, New York, Azriel joined him as he traveled from Brooklyn to Washington, D.C., back to Manhattan, and then to Oakland, California. And then they have an exhibit, I guess, plane tickets. In Oakland, Azriel and Kelly continued to have intercourse, and while in California, Azriel believed Kelly had impregnated her. Kelly wanted her to have an abortion she was petrified to have. And then they have some more exhibits. It says, and then the exhibits were of Azriel texting her friend in October 2015. He nutted in me today. But he said, we need to look into that abortion stuff because he wants to keep my body right and tight. And now, if I was 18, he wouldn't care about the baby. Speaking, I'm 17. Azriel explained in text messages to her friend that Kelly wanted her to have an abortion because she was not 18. In fact, Azriel was not pregnant and was therefore not forced to undergo an abortion at 17. While Azriel was still 17, Kelly, using Apple iPads, also recorded Azriel engaged in sexual activity. And I'm not seeing no exhibits popping up here, okay? For those of you who claim that they were showing all these videos, there's no exhibits listed here where they're talking about that. So while Azriel was with Kelly, Kelly also had several other women who lived with him and or regularly had sex with him. Those women included Juice, Dominique, Joy, and V. Azriel continued to live with Kelly until his arrest in July 2019. During the time that Azriel spent with Kelly, Azriel learned through Kelly and others, including Juice, that Kelly required Azriel and the other women who lived with Kelly to comply with the rules he set and to comply with the requests. And then they have a government exhibit. It says electronic note containing reminders as to how to act around Kelly, including trust daddy and whatever he says, whenever he says, with no rebuttal, disrespect, or rebellion. Another exhibit was a handwritten note containing reminders as to how to act around Kelly, including stop defending myself, anything daddy says to help me, thank him and be happy and fix the problem. And these are notes that Azriel wrote to herself that she could have wrote the same day that she called the feds and said that she was pissed off Justin was still at their house. And now she wanted to be a witness for the government. And it says, I know lately I have been forgetful for the protocols and rules you have. I am sorry for not being the image I am supposed to be. I know I have been all over the place, messing up in multiple places, not following instructions, being goofy, being extra, being careless. Text message authored by Kelly to Azriel, instructing Azriel, I need to be trusted by you 1,000,000%, that when I say something, you don't even hesitate, you do it and go with it. I know you were young, but that is no excuse to disobey me and not to what I tell you to do, because I want to groom you and be bonded with you 1,000,000% before that. And then we also know it is important that Azriel had access, I believe, to his iPads at some point, because remember she downloaded the porn, the porn with the men or whatever, But all that evidence was tossed out because there was no proof that he told her to do any of that stuff. So, Kelly prescribed a number of rules for Azriel and his other girlfriends to follow. Azriel was required to wear baggy clothing. Azriel addressed Kelly as Daddy and was expected to stand up when Kelly entered the room and give him a kiss. Azriel accompanied Kelly to his nightly basketball games and to other venues, although she often remained in the Sprinter van when Kelly went inside those venues. When Azriel needed to use a restroom, she would urinate into a cup on the Sprinter. Because she was not permitted to get off the van, Azriel was not permitted to look at or otherwise interact with other men. And then I want to stop here because there's a note on the previous page. So the first note says, Dr. Don Hughes testified that isolation, indoctrination, intimidation, subjugation, surveillance, secrecy, humiliation, and collateral all may be used as a means of coercive control. And then the other note says, one of Kelly's employees saw Kelly's female guests and girlfriends urinate in cups on the Sprinter rather than finding a restroom. Another employee understood that Kelly required his female guests and girlfriends to obtain permission. And let me scroll down because the rest of that would be at the bottom of the next page. Oh my God. Okay, before using the restroom. In addition, as noted, Kelly confronted Suzette Mayweather after he learned that several months earlier she had let Dominique off the bus when they were in New Orleans without first obtaining Kelly's permission. And then the next note says Azriel's testimony about Kelly's directive that she and other women limit communications with others was corroborated by contemporaneous text messages she exchanged with her friend from high school. Then they have a text message from Azriel to her friend saying, y'all can't do that because he checked my phone. Another text message from Azriel to her friend saying, testing you will get me caught up. In addition, her testimony was corroborated by testimony and other evidence establishing that Dominique too was not permitted to communicate with others. Elizabeth Mayweather testified that she purchased a cellular phone for Dominique and that when Kelly found out, he became irate. Letters seized from Kelly's storage facility also show that Dominique referenced not having a phone in several letters and or notes with the defendant. Handwritten letter from Dominique to Kelly asking, how do we gain trust if I cannot use the phone my father bought me to look up things on my own in front of you? Handwritten letter asking, can I spend some time with my little brother and mom before we leave? I do not have a phone, so I know I cannot go out to meet them. Another note, I was wrong for asking my mom to pick me up from the place you work and sleep. The fact you gave me cab fare and permission to visit her was, and then there was a word crossed out. Similarly, when Kelly learned that Dominique had shared personal information with Suzette Mayweather lied and told Kelly that she had brought up the conversation that led to Dominique sharing those details because she feared that what Kelly might do to Dominique. Then there's another note. Several of these letters were recovered from Kelly's storage facility. The storage facility that Azriel had access to for months while he was locked up and before the government, and then a year, I think, he was locked up in July of 2019, and then Azriel told the government to go back to the storage, and I think they went back to the storage in February of 2020 because the third superseding indictment, I believe, came out in March of 2020. So she had like 6 to 7 months to go in and out of that storage before she told the government to go look in that storage again because all this stuff was in the storage. And I hope this is stuff that Banjin brings up. So it says several of these letters were recovered from Kelly's storage facility. Handwritten letter by Jane, including claim that she had done some things that I just know you. Let's go down. There's a whole bunch of notes. Oh my God. Y'all remind me I was on page 37 if I get lost. Cannot forgive me for. I've been stealing money from the stash you told me about. I also was selling your jewelry too when I could because it was just a rush and fun. And then another handwritten letter by Azriel, including, I also did something bogus just in case you caught me stealing and let me go. I decided I would spank myself really hard until I had bruises on me. And then another letter, I desperately wanted you to want me how I craved you. I started to make threats to you and I'm sorry. If you don't bring me that dick, then I'm going to tell everyone you R'd me. I'm going to tell everyone you've been R'ing me since I've been a minor. And then there's another note. An iPad recovered from Kelly's residence on the day of his arrest depicted Okay, sorry about that. My phone started ringing. So I was at note number 11. An iPad recovered from Kelly's residence on the day of his arrest depicted Kelly spanking another woman in apparent punishment. And then Government Exhibit 328B. Still image showing Kelly spank one of Kelly's female guests while guest was naked, crying, and visibly in pain. And I thought that was Halle in that video. Okay, then we're going to go back up here to page 37 where I left off when I started reading these notes. Okay. So Azriel was not permitted to look at or otherwise interact with other men. For example, when Azriel was in the elevator, she turned around so that she faced the back of the elevator and she relied on Kelly's assistance to interact with male employees at retail stores and salons. Now, if you was on the elevator with somebody and they turned around and faced the back of the wall, would you not think that that was odd and crazy and be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking at the back of that wall? Anyway. For example, when Azriel, okay, I already read the elevator. Azriel had to seek permission before she left the hotel room where she was staying. Kelly discouraged communications with her friends and did not allow her to use social media. Although we have a video, and we need to send that video to General Bonjean where she admits she had social media the entire time that she was staying with him. To enforce his rules, Kelly told Azriel that his engineers could access her phone or her iCloud to see with whom she had been communicating. Azriel also was not permitted to exchange personal information with the other women who lived with Kelly. Now, y'all all in the same house. How y'all not exchanging personal information? Oh, Lord. Azriel was expected to regularly draft letters containing false and embarrassing statements, a process that was often overseen by Juice. But once again, we didn't have Juice on the stand testifying to prove that any of this stuff was true. So Azriel also was expected to create videos containing false and embarrassing statements and doing humiliating things, including a video of her eating feces. Azriel was also required to report to Kelly when she saw anyone violating Kelly's rules. Shortly after Azriel met Kelly, he began to punish her when she did not follow his prescribed rules or comply with the established protocols. Punishments inflicted by Kelly, including spankings, which Kelly called chastisements. It ain't that funny, somebody that's supposed to have a learning disability walk around here using the word chastisement instead of I'm finna beat your ass. Now, does that make sense? Vicious physical assaults and confining Azriel to a room or a bus for prolonged periods of time. And then they have Government Exhibits 240C, 240F, 240G, and 935B. It says the spankings occurred every 2 to 3 days. Okay, but these exhibits were... Let's see. I think those exhibits were the text messages where the assistants were going back and forth about how he treated her. The spankings occurred every 2 to 3 days. Then it says Exhibit 459, handwritten letter by Azriel to Kelly, including her saying, I'm getting spankings nearly every day. One of the first physical assaults by Kelly occurred on August 21st, 2015, when Azriel was still 17 years old, and when Divine Stevens sent a text message to Kelly with Azriel's first name and a rat emoji. Okay, and then there was an exhibit, which I believe was the text message from Stevens. And then it says, Azriel also saw Kelly spanking and otherwise physically assaulting the other women who lived with Kelly when Kelly perceived that one had broken his rules. The first time Kelly confined Azriel to a room occurred after Juice reported to Kelly that Azriel had purchased sweatpants that were not sufficiently baggy. Kelly told Azriel that she could not leave the room until she admitted her transgression, and so she stayed in the room for several days in a row and would eat only when food was left outside the door. Another time occurred shortly after Christmas 2015, also while Azriel was still 17. Kelly made Azriel stay in a room at his recording studio because she told him that she wanted to celebrate holidays. She had her phone and she recounted to one of her friends that same day, then I was like, can I take a shower? Can I take a shower? And he was like, no, you're going to stay in the room until you tell me why you. And then the remainder of the text message was not retained. How convenient. When Kelly subjected Azriel to confinement on a bus, his assistant typically stood nearby. And then they have exhibits 250 and 240. Azriel would not be permitted to leave the location where she had been confined until she apologized in a manner that Kelly deemed sufficient. Excuse me. Oh, God bless me. That Kelly deemed sufficient. Oftentimes, Azriel would write several letters apologizing to Kelly before he accepted one and allowed her to leave. And then they have exhibits 457 through 60. And then also, once again, these are handwritten letters. We don't know when the letters were written, and the fact that she had access to the storage for 6 to 7 months following his arrest, which is a point that Bunjin should bring up. So Kelly also required Azriel to have sexual contact with other men and women at his direction, including the women living with Kelly, his assistants Lily and Cassandra and Alex, a man she had never even seen prior to Kelly directing her to have sex with him. And then we know Lily is the cousin or something who has been really sick. Is that the same? I believe that's the same Lily, who has been hospitalized. I think she's had a couple of strokes. And then I don't know who Cassandra is. And Cassandra didn't seem to testify. I don't remember her testifying. So where is she? And let's see. And then Alex, we know he did testify, but he went off the rails while he was on the stand. So we don't know how truthful his information is. And so it goes on to say Kelly decided with whom she would have contact with, when it would occur. Kelly recorded most of these encounters and always remained in charge, directing each participant precisely what to do and when to do it. Yet we don't have any exhibits for all this recording that was going on. So then what is this, 14? XIV, I think it's 14. Faith. Faith met Kelly in March of 2017 when she was 19 years old in San Antonio, Texas, after attending his concert at the Tobin Center with her older half-sister. At the conclusion of the concert, two women wearing t-shirts with Kelly's face. Okay, guys, hold on a second. I'm having trouble loading the rest of the document. Okay, sorry about that. So the two female employees approached wearing the t-shirts that had staff on the back and approached Faith and her sister and invited them to a backstage after party that Kelly was having and gave them wristbands to attend. When Faith arrived at the after party, there was music playing and alcohol being served. No one checked Faith's ID before entry. Thereafter, Kelly arrived at the after party and eventually approached Faith and handed her a piece of paper with 2 of his phone numbers on it. Kelly told Faith to text him later and to include a photograph of herself so he would know the text was from her. I guess he had to learn from Azriel. Wait a minute, was Faith before or after Azriel? Okay, because y'all remember Azriel mama was pretending. Yeah, this was after Azriel. So Azriel's mom was pretending to be Azriel with the text messages, which the government failed to include in their response or to talk about them texts from Azriel and her mother. And so anyway, he learned the lesson from that, and he was like, send me a picture so I know it's you I'm talking to. So when Faith arrived at the after party, there was music playing and alcohol being served. No one checked Faith's ID before entry. Thereafter, Kelly arrived at the after party and eventually approached Faith and handed her a piece of paper. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Kelly also invited Faith and her sister to his dressing room for food, and the 2 of them accompanied Kelly there. Okay, and make sure she sent the photograph. Okay, when Faith got home to her parents' house, she texted Kelly a selfie and her name and went to sleep. Several hours later, after she woke up, Faith noticed that Kelly had texted her back, complimenting her and inviting him to come see him. I think they meant her to come see him while he was still in San Antonio. Faith did not take Kelly up on his invitation, but she began communicating with him regularly by text, phone calls, and other FaceTime. During her initial phone calls with Kelly, he referred to himself as Daddy and told Faith to call him Dad. When she did not do so, he hung up on her. Within a week after meeting her, Kelly told Faith he loved her. During their conversations, Kelly also invited Faith to come see him while he was on tour and told her that his assistant Diana Copeland would make the travel arrangements and provide Faith with her contact information. Faith ultimately traveled from San Antonio to New York to see Kelly in May 2017. Copeland made Faith's travel arrangements and Kelly paid for Faith's travel and hotel in Long Island, New York. Faith attended, and then they have an exhibit, I guess, showing the information. Faith attended Kelly's concert at the theater at Westbury in Long Island and then returned to her hotel room and went to sleep. At 6 a.m. the following morning, Kelly showed up at Faith's hotel room and ultimately had sex with her while filming the sex using his iPad. But I don't see any government exhibits showing that. Kelly did not use a condom and did not inform Faith that he had contracted genital herpes prior to engaging in intercourse with her. Afterwards, Kelly told Faith she had a lot to learn when it comes to sex. He just totally annihilated her self-confidence, y'all. And indicated that if she was really like 16, she can tell Daddy. Thereafter, Kelly left the room. At Kelly's direction, and let me say this, a couple of people said that, he's asked about their age or whatever, trying to make it seem like he wanted them to be, under a certain age. But maybe he learned from people lying to him about their age, and that's why he started asking people their age and then trying to say to them, if you are underage, it's okay to let me know, like to get them to tell the truth. And then what would have happened if they had told the truth and said, okay, yeah, I'm really 16. Then if he continued to see them, that would be an issue. But then he could have also said, okay, you got to get out. I can't have anything to do with you. Like, can we look at it from that angle? Like, why does everything have to be so sinister? And then it goes on to say Kelly also told Faith that she could order room service, but not to let the hotel employee delivering the food see her if that person was a man, and not to let the hotel employee come inside the room, whatever their gender. Faith did not see Kelly again on this trip before returning to San Antonio. He did Faith so wrong. In the months that followed, through his assistant Diana Copeland, Kelly arranged for Faith to travel to see him in various cities. Now, what thing I can say about Faith, she was determined, no matter how much he hurt her feelings, she kept coming back for more. Faith saw Kelly in Chicago in June 2017, in Dallas in December 2017, in Los Angeles in January 2018, and in New York City in February 2018. In each of those locations, Kelly engaged in either sexual intercourse with Faith or had Faith give him oral on occasions where Faith told him she had her period. Kelly did not use a condom or tell Faith he had contracted genital herpes prior to sexual contact on any of these occasions, including prior to engaging in sexual intercourse with her at the Mondrian Hotel in New York in February 2018. In Dallas, Faith learned more of Kelly's rules, including that she should never sit with her pointed at another man when she's in public with the defendant. Kelly also had a conversation with Faith about protecting him and indicated that an attorney would bring some papers for Faith to sign, though ultimately the lawyer did not show up, and telling Faith that he needed her to write down something embarrassing about her family that she did not want anyone else to know. When Faith indicated that she had nothing embarrassing to write, Kelly suggested that he could assist her in coming up with a lie about her parents if she could not think of anything on her own. During the conversation, Kelly also divulged that he had a group of girlfriends that he raised, some of whom had been with him for 5 years, others for 15 years. He referred to them as his family and indicated that these girlfriends protected him and loved each other, telling Faith that she reminded him of his girls. Kelly further divulged that he and his girls all slept together. When Faith indicated that she was not into girls, Kelly responded, "Well, if I want both of you to suck my penis, ultimately it's about pleasing me, so you're going to suck my," but they're using the D word with her. Thereafter, he told Faith to send a text message to the various phone numbers stating, "Daddy, I want to be with you and the girls," followed by a praying hands emoji, which she did. Kelly also told Faith that his girls had rules which they all understood and followed, including how he should be greeted when he walked into a room, and that his girls did not discuss personal matters with each other. Now, if somebody is spelling all this out to me and I don't want to be a part of this nonsense, then that's going to be the end of it. So it seemed like he was very upfront about what the deal was going to be, and these dummies decided to go along with it. Kelly then took Faith to his hotel suite where he introduced her to Joy, one of his girls. Joy and Faith subsequently had a brief conversation in the hotel lobby while they waited before joining Kelly in his Sprinter van. Joy appeared very unkempt. Her hair was not done and her nails were chipped. Faith and Joy, what does that have to do with anything? Faith and Joy then joined Kelly in the back of his Sprinter, which was separated from the front of the Sprinter by a permanent divider. A driver and Diana Copeland were in the front seats, and they all drove to a hookah bar. Inside the Sprinter, Faith noticed multiple bras and panties, a toothbrush, and hairbrushes. During the drive, Faith observed Kelly and Joy interact in a very unnatural manner. When Kelly laughed, Joy laughed even louder. When he pulled out a cigar, she lit it. When he wanted to hear music, she played it. And any demand he had, Joy was just on it. After they arrived at the location of the hookah bar, Kelly and Diana Copeland exited the Sprinter to go inside. Kelly instructed Faith and Joy to remain inside the Sprinter, where they remained for hours. At some point, Faith began to feel uncomfortable as she had to use the bathroom and was feeling hot from the vehicle's heating. Faith tried to open the Sprinter door, but it was locked. Joy told Faith that she had to ask first. She contacted Diana Copeland to let her know, but did not hear back from her, and tried calling Kelly, but he did not answer. After Faith texted Copeland that she was about to pass out, Copeland and Kelly finally came back to the Sprinter and drove Faith to an IHOP to use the bathroom. Once at the IHOP, Faith and Joy went to the bathroom and Copeland followed them there, though Copeland did not use the bathroom herself. While Faith was in the bathroom stall, Copeland stood outside of it. They all then returned to the hotel. Following the Dallas trip, Faith continued to communicate with Kelly, but he became more controlling in his communications with her. Kelly wanted to know literally everywhere she went and directed Faith to always answer when he called her. Faith followed these instructions, including seeking Kelly's permission before going out with family members, such as her older sister, because these were Kelly's rules. And then they have some exhibits, which I believe are text messages. During her next trip to see Kelly in Los Angeles, Diana Copeland directed Faith to come to a recording studio, NRG Studios, and wait outside in Kelly's Sprinter van for hours. And let's just talk about this. The fact that, what did their whole thing last? It didn't even last a year, I think. But she only saw him a few times, maybe 4 or 5 times during that time. So how much communication were they really having? And it seems like they only had communications when she was the one that reached out and contacted him. Like, he was never calling her. So you can't say that he was coercing her or forcing her to do anything. So, while inside, Faith had to use the bathroom and texted Copeland. Copeland responded, telling Faith to stand by. After about 15 minutes, Copeland escorted Faith into the studio to use the bathroom and then back to the Sprinter. At some point thereafter, Copeland eventually took Faith inside the studio again and left her in the recording room with 2 smaller rooms within it, telling her Kelly would be in soon. Approximately 15 minutes later, Kelly jogged into the room, quickly retrieved something, and left. Faith did not stand up and greet Kelly when he came into the room. Several hours went by before Kelly returned to the room. While waiting, Faith texted Copeland asking if Kelly wanted her to continue to wait or if she could go back to her hotel room. She did so because Kelly required Faith to get his permission whenever she needed to go somewhere, including the bathroom. Copeland responded approximately an hour later, stating, "Please wait." During these, and then they have an exhibit of that text message. During the several hours Faith first spent inside the Sprinter and the several hours she waited inside the room in the studio, she was not giving any food or water. Did she ask for any food or water? When Kelly finally returned to the room, he told Faith that he would have returned sooner if she had greeted him properly when he came in earlier. Kelly then directed Faith to take off her clothes and walk back and forth. Faith told Kelly she had her period, even though she did not, because she did not want to have sex with him. Kelly sighed and said, "Well, why did you come?" Exactly. Okay, that's how I feel about it. Why did you come? He then told Faith to take off her pants, and she walked back and forth 3 times in a bodysuit. Kelly then went inside one of the smaller rooms with the larger room and told Faith to come inside. The room was the size of a walk-in closet. When Faith entered the small room, she saw a gun on an ottoman in the room. Kelly's demeanor changed and he got real serious. He moved the gun near him, sat down in a chair, and told Faith to stand across from him. He then told Faith to pose and took photos of her with his iPad while complaining that she was not being sexy enough and became irritated. Kelly then proceeded to ask Faith a series of questions, including asking her how many men she had seen her naked and how many male friends she had. Kelly told Faith there would be consequences if she did not answer truthfully. When Faith responded in a manner he did not like, Kelly stated, "Do you want to take that back?" Faith said no. Kelly then paused and got a stern look on his face, telling Faith that he and her father had the same gift of spiritual discernment, because y'all know Faith's stepdad is a preacher, and that he would know if she was lying to him. Faith was taken aback. Kelly then stood up and put a pillow on the floor and told Faith to get on her knees, which she did. The defendant then pulled out his penis, grabbed the back of Faith's neck, told her to suck his D, and pushed her forward so her mouth made contact with his penis. Kelly's gun remained nearby when this occurred. Faith was intimidated and did not want to give Kelly oral, but she did so. Throughout, Kelly's hand remained on the back of her neck, guiding her. Faith did not feel like she could leave the room because she was under Kelly's rules and he had a weapon, so she wasn't even going to step out of line. A weapon that he hadn't threatened her with, by the way. Following her final trip to New York in February 2018, Faith stopped seeing Kelly and eventually filed a civil lawsuit against him in New York. After she filed the lawsuit, Kelly arranged for compromising photos he had taken of Faith to be sent to her civil lawyer in Brooklyn, New York, with a letter threatening, among other things, to release uncropped photos of versions of the photos publicly if she did not abandon her lawsuit and stop speaking publicly about Kelly. And then they have the pictures entered as exhibits. And you guys know that this is the whole Don Russell situation. And for those of you who are new to this whole saga, I'll post a link above about Don Russell and his arrest. And Don Russell trial continues to be delayed, and I think it's out to July now, but I'm not sure. Faith did not withdraw her lawsuit. Thereafter, Kelly's associate, Donnell Russell, sent a threatening text to Faith and her mother and created a Facebook page using an alias, Don, called Surviving Lies, where he ultimately followed through on those threats and publicly posted graphic photos of Faith before Facebook took the photos down. And then they have the exhibits of those photos. Okay, so I am going to stop here, and then we'll pick back up with the discussion portion of this, because like I said, this is 109 pages and I'm only on page 51. So we'll conclude with the next part of the video that will go through the discussion and why they believe that they had this clear and convincing evidence of the case. So guys, go ahead, leave your comments below and let me know what you think so far. Like, is this an enterprise, or as Jennifer Bongine has pointed out, like this is just about a man who was into some freaky deaky stuff and he found the right dumb women, because you got to be a certain type of woman to put up with this type of stuff. Like the average woman like myself ain't dealing with this kind of nonsense, whether I was 17, 37, 47, 57, or 77. Okay, like there is no way I would have been involved in this nonsense. And so sometimes people make a choice. Okay, like they don't have to be coerced or forced to do anything. And we know that these women were free to come and go as they please and do whatever they wanted to. And so I think that we're not going to get much from Ann Dunley, but I think that the Second Circuit is definitely going to pay attention to the nuances of this and realize that this was not a racketeering case. And then I also want to note that in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, she's the girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. The judge in her case has been appointed to the Second Circuit of Appeal. So I don't know what that would mean for whether or not this case will get heard by the Second Circuit. And then I also want you guys to understand that it's not automatic that this case will be heard by the Second Circuit. Jennifer Bongine will have to go to the Second Circuit and make a convincing case as to why this case needs to be heard by them before they take the case up and review it and come back with a decision. So I'm going to end this here. You guys drop down in the conversations and let's talk about, what you heard and what you think and what you believe. Rate the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And I shall be back with the final part of this, and we can talk about that as well. So I'll talk to you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.